Welcome to this committee meeting. Please ensure that telephones and other noise-making devices are silenced and powered off. The consumption of food and beverages in Senate rooms is prohibited. If you wish to address this committee, please be prepared to approach the lectern when public comment is requested. Identify yourself for the record and observe the stated time limits.
Thank you. Welcome to P&E. I know we have some members that have dual responsibilities right now, so we're going to open the roll.
Yeah, I've hit it a few times. It's not working.
You got to be soft with it. Be gentle. There you go. All right. Now we have a quorum. We have two new members, a part of our committee. But before I introduce those folks, we have to, Senator is going to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the oaths of office and certificates of election of Luther Henry Cyphers III and Kanan Srinivasan are found to be in proper order.
Is there a second? Second. All right. There is a motion, a second, that the certificates of elections of Luther Henry Cyphers III and Kanan Srinivasan are in proper order. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. Now, starting with my left, we'll have the senator introduce himself and his district, followed by the senator on my right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Senator Kanan Srinivasan, representing 32nd District in Eastern Loudoun. Thank you, and I'm very glad to be here.
Good afternoon. Luther Cyphers, representing Senate District 10, Amelia, Appomattox, Buckingham, Cumberland, Fluvanna, Goochland, parts of Hanover and Louisa, Powhatan, and parts of Prince Edward.
All right, thank you. And before we get to the gubernatorial appointments, we do have just one bill for re-referral. That is SB 1404. The patron has been notified. Is there a motion to re-refer it to Ed and Health?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Is this a recorded vote? All right, please state your preference on the board. Is anybody has Skyler's okay. All right, with that 12 yeas, 0 noes, that bill is re-referred to yeah, where?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I was going to vote no. I don't want that bill back. So.
All right. Now, what we have for us, gubernatorial appointments. We'll start off with SJ 273. I understand there is an amendment.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator recognized. Senator Evans?
Yeah, I don't know if the clerk has the amendment prepared, but otherwise I can state it.
I believe the clerk has the amendments prepared.
I would move the line amendment.
Is there a second? Well,
What is the line amendment?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, so on line 198 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 198, 199, and 200. And then on line 330 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 330, 331, 332.
Mr. Chairman.
who said that? Senator Sterling. Yes, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, the line amendment as read referred to striking some lines. This obviously is referring to specific individuals. Could council identify those individuals that are proposed to be stricken?
Well, Senator, we don't, out of respect for those appointees who are just citizens themselves, we don't say the names of those members who are those potential appointees who are being stricken.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Sir, you have the floor.
This is a public Senate joint resolution that was introduced before this committee. It's a public hearing, and identifying line numbers without identifying the individuals that are being proposed to be stricken is a lack of transparency. And so I think certainly folks who are being removed and those who might like to speak on their behalf deserve an opportunity to know.
Sir, it is customary that we refrain from using those members' names who are being stricken. This is a public document. We have set the line. Those potential appointees or lines that are being stricken can reference the public document as to who is being amended in this document. But it's customary at the Senate, we do not reveal the names of those members who are being stricken. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Zef.
All right, Mr. Chairman, if we're not going to provide transparency and say who the names are, can we at least provide transparency and say why they're being stricken? Because I think the members of the committee should know why certain members are stricken. Otherwise, if we infer what the reason is, I think that could go the wrong direction. And I'm happy to elaborate more as we go through and start striking individuals off of these as soon as I see a pattern.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, I thank the senator for the question. I would say that we found the nominees to be inconsistent with the expectations, goals, and values we had for the work of those boards.
Thank you, Senator Eben. Now, do we have a motion?
I moved the amendment. I think, was it seconded?
Was it seconded? Is this a voice vote?
Mr. Chairman.
All in,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sturtevant.
Speaking to the motion, Mr. Chairman, one of the individuals who's proposed to be stricken, I believe, is someone who previously ran against the current frontrunner for the Democrat nomination for governor. She is someone who has been nominated for a gubernatorial appointment, and there's really not been any specific information to identify why this particular individual should be stricken.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, the fact that someone ran for office is not any reason that we would strike them. We just found their nomination to be inconsistent with the expectations, goals, and values that we hold for the work of those boards.
Thank you, Senator Eben. There is a motion, a second. This is a voice vote. To adopt the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. SJ 273 is before us. Please open the roll.
Move report.
Move the report. I'm sorry.
Second.
Move the report
As amended.
as amended, and is properly second. Please open the vote.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Next, we have SJ 274 in front of us. Is there a motion to report?
So moved, and I believe there's no amendment to this particular resolution.
So amendment to that. Has it been properly second?
Second.
Please open the vote.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Reports. We have SJ 275 in front of us with amendments.
There are some amendments.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would move the line amendments and ask the clerk to state the lines involved.
And I'll second that amendment.
Mr. Chair, on line 229 of the introduced bill, strike lines 229 to 230. On line 250 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 250 and 251. On line 254 of the introduced bill, strike lines 254 to 255. On line 256 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 256 and 257. On line 340 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 340 and 341. And on line 342 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 342 and 343.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sturtevant.
The first line amendment to remove an individual is again someone who has run for office of a member of the party that is not in the majority in this body. And so there would seem to be a similar pattern to the issue that I raised with the previous resolution. I would also note that the deceased father of this individual is a former Supreme Court justice. And so I would ask, Mr. Chairman, there is a concern here of politics being played with regard to the individuals that are being removed from the block for these gubernatorial appointments. And at least in this particular instance, there seems to be someone who is getting caught up in disagreements that some may have on this committee with the rulings of her deceased father. And so I would raise again that concern that the lack of transparency, being able to identify these people and discuss them is concerning.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, the person in question ran for a public office that is by law nonpartisan. It's a nonpartisan election. She ran for school board. Her stated views and her actions are not consistent with the goals and values of this particular board, as it's seen by some of us down here.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just add that we just confirmed on Senate Joint Resolution 274, someone who ran as the Republican nominee for Congress in the 8th District to a state board. Whether or not you ran for an office once doesn't qualify people to be unquestioned, but it's important to this side that the people that we place on these boards, and we have confirmed thousands of Governor Youngkin's nominees, but we do expect that they be consistent with the expectations, goals, and values we hold for the work of these boards. And every now and then, there's some that we might disagree with.
Thanks, Senator Evans. Senator Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that sometimes there are some of these elections that can be rather bruising, and that might have happened in our colleagues' area. But speaking as not always a legislator, but as a mom, and a woman, I feel like, particularly on an appointment like this, it is so important that we have a range and a diversity of our thoughts and ideas that can be able to connect with those and understand the range of concerns that can come up with a board like this. And I had the opportunity to spend a few minutes speaking with this nominee, and I can attest, I feel like that's something that would reflect many of those that I know and go to and book clubs with and connect with on a personal level. And I think that would be just this particular nominee would be a phenomenal addition to this board, and I would strongly support it.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention.
Move to report.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment.
On SJ 276.
Nope, on all of the gubernatorial appointments as a whole with a pattern I've noticed here.
Well, sir, when that is in order, I will allow you to speak on the next SJ 286, and you can make your comments then.
Great, thank you.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Mr. Chair, on line 467 of the introduced bill, strike all of lines 467 and 468.
Or do you want to make comments?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I did want to make comments on this, so I've kind of gone through and looked at everybody we've pulled off. And I know we're not mentioning names, so I won't mention names, but if you look at the individuals we're taking off and look at their resumes, they're extremely qualified individuals. I mean, you have one individual whose dad was a Supreme Court justice, no longer with us. We have one that ran for Congress. You have another one who was the chief of staff to Mike Pence. You have other individuals who parents or grandparents were part of our Virginian history, and you look at what they've accomplished individually on their resumes, and I find it hard that we are going to say they're not qualified. Now, I'm sure there's some other reason, but it looks to me like this is more of a political hit job on some of these than it is for qualifications after reviewing the resumes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Your remarks are noted. Listen, it's not about qualifications. This is not a political hit job. It's that some of these appointees are inconsistent with the goals and values of the specific board that they were going to be appointed to. So do we have a motion to move the amendment?
I'll make a motion.
This motion is second. Senator Evans, did you have one of them?
No.
We have a motion and a second to move SJ286. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The ayes have it. Is there a motion to?
Move to report as amended.
Second.
It's been motioned and it's properly second. Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. This bill's reports. Now before us, we have constitutional amendments. Now, last week I set time specifically on Tuesday to do all constitutional amendments. So I was surprised to see we had two more show up on the docket. We have a full docket. We also have a short amount of days to get through all the bills throughout this committee. So with that being said, I would ask Senator SJ270, Senator Peake is here for his amendment, constitutional amendment.
Mr. Chair. All right. I've got some great bills up here in front of your committee. I know several of them we've dealt with before and might not go that far, and I understand that, but let's look at SB 1072. And this is actually a good...
Hold on. No. We're doing the constitutional amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. You asked for constitutional amendments. This is an excellent constitutional amendment. Let's talk about that. As most of you know, and some of you who are running for lieutenant governor, if anybody up there run for lieutenant governor probably know, our governor is limited to one term in office. One term, 4 years. But our lieutenant governors and our attorney generals have no limits to how long they can stay in office or run for office or how many times they can run for office. And I tell you, it didn't really used to be that big a deal until all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, somebody decided to run for attorney general a third time. It's just too much. We don't need somebody in for 12 years. If the governor's office has to turn over every 4 years, isn't it enough for the attorney general to do 8 years, for the lieutenant governor to do 8 years? So if we're going to have one term for the governor, let's double it for our AGs, let's double it for our LGs, and just help people not fall victim to just staying in the same office for eternity.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anyone here to speak in support?
I didn't recruit anyone. This is a
Okay.
bill I brought on my own volition.
Do we have anyone to speak in opposition of the bill? Okay, any comments from members of the committee?
A motion.
All right, now entertain the motion.
I would just say the voters get to, decide currently, and I think that's a fine system. And with that, I would move to PBI.
Second.
The motion to PBI, there's a
Before-
properly second, and now, sir.
Is you get ready
I
to
will
vote
grant
final?
you the-
Well, the voters get to pick the governor too. Why do we only let the voters pick the governor for one term, but not let them pick the others for two?
We do need to fix that.
Sir, hold on.
Sorry.
There's no cross-talking in this community.
Thank you. That was all I had on that one.
Those your last words?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. There's a motion, it's been properly second. Please open the vote.
I'm just trying to say Mark Herring again.
All right.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Senator Obenshain here. Okay, we'll come back to that. I'll tell you what, Senator Peake, since you are here, we'll come up and do the rest of your bills.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're going to do SB 1070.
1070.
Yes, and we're going to, the patron of SB 764, McDougal, wants to roll his bill into yours since they are identical.
Yes, that's perfectly fine.
Second.
It's been motioned second that SB 764 is rolled into SB 1070. Do we have take a vote on that? Is that a recorded vote?
Yes, sir.
All right, please open the vote. Did Salim leave a proxy?
Yes.
Okay,
Ayes
we got it.
15, no 0.
All right, now the bills is properly before. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Y'all have heard this bill before. When we'd had photo ID for 10, 20 years, really hadn't been any problem. There hadn't been any complaints. We had actually provided free transportation for anyone who requested to go get their photo ID. I think one person had requested that over the prior 20 years. And when we did away with photo ID, there wasn't any significant jump in election attendance, so it really had no effect. It's interesting, today we had talk on the constitutional amendments, and one of the speakers said that 80% of the population supports abortion rights. Well, 80% of the population also supports photo ID, and I'm just trying to help bring the Commonwealth into agreement with 80% of the population.
Thank you. Do you have anyone here to support?
I did not recruit anyone.
Is there anyone here in opposition of the bill?
Those online that would like to speak on the bill, please
In
raise your hand.
opposition of the bill? Please come up, ma'am. You have 2 minutes. Do you have anyone online? One person online, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris DeRosa. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Virginia. The League opposes SB 1070, the elimination of the rule allowing voters to sign a voter ID confirmation statement would needlessly turn legitimate voters away from the ballot box.
All right, thank you. And there's no one online to speak in support of it? Okay, so members online, we do have a online policy rule. Please ensure that your camera is on and you have 1 minute.
Galen Canoyton, please unmute your mic and turn on your camera.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn it on.
Okay, please go to the next person. We'll come back to you.
Melody Clark, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Can you see me okay?
Yes, I think I saw her.
Okay. Thanks so much for having this hearing this afternoon. I am Melody Clark, a Virginia resident, speaking on behalf of Virginia Institute Action. Thank you for taking my comments. We do support, I guess we're rolling 764 into 1070. And photo ID, these photo ID requirements are overwhelmingly supported by both Black and Hispanic voters by an overwhelming majority. The public also overwhelmingly backs voter ID requirements, regardless of their background and political persuasion. They are overwhelmingly in favor of requiring that voters show ID to vote. In fact, when you look at the statistics in areas where voter ID has been enacted, the involvement of minority populations has increased in those areas. For these reasons and many others, Virginia Institute Action very much supports the passage of 764 and 1070. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments. Obviously, she was in support of your legislation, and I believe it's the. All right. Well. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're not going to play that game online. Is there any members who would like to make a comment today in either support or opposition of the bill with general statements? Not seeing any. Do we have a motion?
Move the report. Second.
The substitute motion.
PBI.
Second.
Substitute motion takes precedence. Please open the roll.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Ayes 8, no 7. Ayes 8, no 7. Bill is PBI. And you have, I believe you and Senator French have SB 1072 and SB 856.
They the same, similar, absentee voting in person?
Yes, they are identical. Would you all like to roll those in two, or?
Well, we can roll them together and have them killed together.
Whatever's your pleasure.
Efficiency.
Efficiency. Go together. Did you take yours to 14 days?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay.
We'll
present these together.
As long as I get to talk against this big city lawyer.
Okay, why don't we do that? We're going to, there a motion to roll these bills?
Do we want to use Peak's number?
And we'll use Peaks number 1072.
That way yours doesn't get killed, Tim. Your record will
Since
stay
he's
better.
on a roll. So there's a motion to roll SB 856 into SB 1072. It's been motioned and properly second. Please open the vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Now, I've got another motion.
All right.
Motion to pass the bill by definitely.
Let me speak first.
Wait, we'll give him an opportunity to speak before entertaining.
Thank you,
the
Mr.
motion.
Chair. And on behalf of Senator French and myself, I didn't know he had it for the exact same days as well. But we were here last year. I said repeal or change the whole thing, early voting, to 14 days. And also talked about how we had 135 days of voting last year. And a lot of it was for the primaries where almost nobody showed up. Localities will have a primary for city council or a primary for a House of Delegates. We, just not hotly contested where one candidate's kind of a fringe candidate. And the registrars are there 45 days manning the polls. I will tell you that after that bill, one of the members on that side of the dais up there said, that's not a bad idea for primaries, but we probably need to get a Democrat to bring it. I'm not going to mention any names. But no Democrats brought it, so Senator French and I brought it for registrars because we care about our city and state workers. The registrars, 14 days is more than enough for primaries. So your primary, you get your voters out there. Our primary, we get our voters out there. The registrars are horribly overworked, and people are not showing up in these primaries, even the presidential ones. Yeah. 14 days is more than enough. Be kind to our workers. Senator French.
I'm just going to say a few words here. Thank Chairman Rouse and the committee. So I polled all the registrars in my district, and overwhelmingly they were in support of working on this 45-day in person, not changing the 45-day absentee, not doing anything like that. Just in my district alone, the registrars think it's cost each office about $350 a day on 30 days with the elections and all five different things. It's about $150,000 a year in my precinct it's costing our localities. This is straight money that we could be using for our schools and things like that. So I think that's important that we look at this a little bit. We're not taking away absentee voting. We're just shortening that in-person window to 45 days is kind of what my bill is. And one of them told me that in their peer group, it was 99-1 in favor of shortening the in-person days. That's within the registrars. That's a 99% rate. So let's listen to these people. They're overworked, and we want integrity. We want integrity in our elections, and I think this would help them do that by not overworking them in a very stressful thing. We know what elections are to run and how hard it is during that time. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Senator French. Is there anyone to speak in support of these bills? Please come forward.
Those online who wish to speak in support, please raise your
You
hand.
have someone by you. You have 2 minutes, sir.
My name is Mike Cantwell. I'm representing Veterans for All Voters. I support this bill. I believe that 45 days is too long for the early voting process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone online to speak in support? How many do we have? 3 people. Please ensure that your camera is on and you have 1 minute each.
Anne Gregorian, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you. I support this bill, although it seems that both the House and the Senate P&E does not think that, I'm sorry, although the House P&E both think that expense is no option for localities, expense and taxpayers. I'm a citizen, and it is an option. And I've worked elections where you sit there for weeks and do nothing, and it's ridiculous. And then when the last 2 weeks come in, then we have voting going on. So I would urge everyone to quit playing politics with this issue and think about what we could be doing with this money. We have a lot of need in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melody Clark, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Thank you. I am Melody Clark on behalf of Virginia Institute Action. I thank the legislators for bringing this legislation, not only for Virginians, but for very much the localities. These very extended elections cost a lot of money, and it's not just money. I've spoken to so many who actually work in the registrar's office, who are grandmothers who don't get to spend time with their grandkids because of the 45 days of early voting. If you look at the statistics, even the commissioner said in her presentation to you that the majority of the people vote in the last 2 weeks, right before the election, because we all procrastinate. It's just what we do, regardless of who we are. And it's just unnecessary to spend the taxpayers' money on all of the early time that, regardless of party, just isn't necessary. So we certainly support shortening this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Susan Hogue, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon, and thank you, members, for allowing me to speak to you this afternoon. I have worked as CAP chief early voting.
Ma'am, you need to ensure that your camera is on.
It is. Oh, how about that? There we go. Can you see me now, sir?
You may continue. Yes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon again. I apologize for the technical snag there. Susan Hogue, I have worked in early voting for the last 9 elections as CAP chief, and then assisting the other chiefs that are doing the in-person voting. And clearly the 14 days prior to election are by far and away the most sought after and voted days. And prior to that, I have gone to the sites, and there are 0 people that come to vote, and it's clearly a huge waste of resources that could otherwise be tagged for other uses. And with taxpayer money, we always want to be mindful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone speaking in opposition of the bill in the room? There was one more. I'm sorry, just one. Did they just sign on?
They just raised their hand a little bit later.
Okay, well, and we're not playing that game. Those in opposition of the bill in the room, please come forward.
Those online in opposition, please raise your hand.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rouse.
Good afternoon.
My name is Krista Rose. I'm representing the League of Women Voters today. The League opposes this bill. If this bill is passed, it would unduly restrict early in-person voting to 14 days for general and primary elections. Ballots must be ready 45 days before an election, in order to be mailed to military and overseas voters. So ballots are ready 45 days ahead of time. There's no reason to make voters at home wait longer. Many of those voters work long hours, work multiple jobs, care for children, or care for elders, including some combination of those demands. Many who are themselves elderly must rely on others to get to the polls. Many voters have long commutes, cannot be sure they can get to their polling place on election day, and yet they prefer to vote in person. They should not be deprived of the opportunity they already have to vote conveniently. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online in opposition? All right. Please ensure that your camera is on. You have 1 minute.
Galen Knoyton, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Galen Knoyton, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Yes. Okay, I was on. I'm just having issues. I'm gonna have to go to.
Okay, we'll come back to her.
Kristen Sakos, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
I'm on that.
We'll come back to her.
Kristen Sakos, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
I've unmuted. Oh, there. I'm sorry. I couldn't find the button for this. Okay. Almost there. Hi. Chairman Rouse, my senator, Senator Deeds, and other members of the committee, my name is Kristen Sakos. I live in Charlottesville. I'm testifying on behalf of the Virginia State Conference of the NAACP. We urge you to vote against this bill, which would shorten the period available for early voting, absentee voting in person. The NAACP opposes any efforts by the Commonwealth of Virginia to restrict the right to vote or to disenfranchise citizens. I am an election worker in Charlottesville. I'm assistant chief of my precinct and have assisted with early voting. And I can attest just personally that it makes a huge difference, both ahead of time and also on election day, where fewer people are coming last minute, which I believe also reduces the likelihood of errors on election day. So please vote against this. Thank you.
Galen Knoyton, you may unmute your camera, or unmute your microphone and turn on your camera, please. Thank you. You're muted.
Okay, hi. I'm sorry, I was having some camera issues, and my colleague already spoke on behalf of the Virginia NAACP, but I just want to add to it, because we've been speaking on this bill for several years, is that we strongly oppose, the Virginia NAACP strongly oppose this bill. This is not about, not only about the money, because if you look at any line items, it's not as much as everyone says it is. This is also about working with staff to make sure that, the city timeline is tight. But also, this is about the voter. Once you start cutting back on voting rights and cutting back on access, then it's going to keep cutting, and we're not going for it at all. So we strongly oppose this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill, I represent Virginia Beach, Norfolk, 2 counties, a whole bunch of towns, 54 of them. And when I talked to our voter registrar, they went weeks without anyone coming in. There's one voter registrar, they had to hire people to sit there all day long with nobody coming to vote. So they were pushing and said they'd like it shorter than that. Virginia Beach and Norfolk, they had a few people come early on, not a tremendous amount until the last couple of weeks, but with the Eastern Shore, they had weeks of people sitting there with nobody coming in to vote at all. Within the last 2 weeks, they said they had like 30 people come in. I think that last 2 weeks or 14 days is very reasonable. Our smaller jurisdictions are spending a lot of money and nobody's coming to vote. So I would support this bill.
Thank you, Senator DeStefano. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill.
You got the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I haven't had a chance to say this in the
the better house, the better side of the Capitol. But I was known to frequently say it in the House. It's not we, the registrars of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. It's we, the people. Right? When we sit here and talk about registrars all day, I mean, it's their job to serve people and for people to have access to the vote. And so I think we should remember that when we're thinking about money and we're thinking about elections, we should really be centering them. I love the registrars. We gave them a pay raise a little while ago. We should do things to help them, but we shouldn't do it at the expense of people being able to have access to the vote. And so I will be voting against this bill.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Senator Durant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill, since my time, it's my fourth session in the House, we've continued to have this discussion over and over again, and I think we will continue to do so. And really, it's about a parameter of what's reasonable. We are hearing a great deal of feedback about the strain that it takes to, and I think I did a little research a few years ago, and at that time, Virginia had one of the most extensive long stretches of voting in the entire country. I think that one real consideration we must take into account is the expense that comes along with early voting. There was a time when election season started after Labor Day, and we are in the unique position in the Commonwealth where we have an election every year. It's just the way it is. We've got either a General Assembly election, a gubernatorial election, congressional, or presidential every year. And this is compounding the expense, the amount of money that is spent on elections, because for those who are running for office, they are seeking to have voter engagement earlier and earlier. And this cycle is just stretching more into the summer, and it's contributing to the sheer amount of money that is being spent in elections. I think we should be coming to the table to have a reasonable discussion about how early we should be going. And 14 days, to me, I carried the same bill in the House, is incredibly reasonable. I know that there are folks who are not political who've said they do appreciate having an opportunity, but a couple of Saturdays before Election Day, with some days to be able to go in during the weekday, is very adequate, and I think it would bring a much better conversation into focus on accommodating those who've got all kinds of special needs in work, and of course we've got mail-in. But when it comes to, I feel like we really need to have a much more honest discussion. 45 days is just excessive. So I very much support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Durant. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion is to pass by. It's been properly second. Any last words, sir?
Just to wrap it up, we're right. 135 days of early voting is absurd. 135 days out of 365. This is just primaries. The expense is outrageous. Nobody shows up for half of these small primaries, and they have to be open for 45 days. It's costing our localities a fortune, and we're not paying them from the state. We're not making it up to them. Thank you.
Please open the vote.
Sorry, Tim.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Maybe I should have took the lead.
You should have taken it.
Sir.
Should have rolled it into yours. They're not used to killing yours. It's just memory with mine.
Please turn to peek. You have one more in front of us, SB 1073.
Yeah, Social Security. It's just a bizarre thought that I had that if we're going to have elections in the Commonwealth, maybe we would want to have photo ID to see who they are, and then maybe when they register to vote, we check their Social Security numbers because they provide them when they register. And so we just run it through the DMV or the Social Security Administration because our DMV is connected to them. And so the registrars, when they get the name, when they get the birth date, when they get the Social Security number, wow, let's check it and see if this is a real person. And then we could make sure that our elections they would be foolproof, and that was the way if somebody lost is a sore loser. They can't go around, oh, I think some illegal person voted in the election and cost me the election. Well, no, so we checked their photo ID, we checked their social security number. We don't have illegal immigrants. We don't have made-up people voting in our elections. It's just a silly, goofy thought that I've got. But, you know, it is so easy to do. So easy to do. And then people say, well, have you ever heard of anything where have you ever had a problem? Yes, we had a problem. We know we had a problem because somebody was registering people out of the graveyard in Harrisonburg, got charged with felonies, because these voter registration people, they'll say, we'll give you $10, we'll give you $15 or $20 for every person you register. That guy was going to the graveyards and copying names off of tombstones and submitting them and registering those people to vote. The registrar recognized the name as a dead person that she knew. The guy got charged with felony. So it is a problem. We have the issue. This takes care of it. But go ahead.
Is there anyone here to speak in support of the bill?
Those online who wish to speak in support of the
Is there anyone
bill,
here to speak
please
in
raise your
opposition
hand.
of the bill? If anyone is speaking in opposition to the bill, please come forward. Since this is very similar to the voter IDs, just using Social Security number verification, I ask that your remarks please be brief.
Mr. Chair, Wes Gibson with the Virginia Education Association. Our committee puts in a position of opposition to this bill. We have many bus drivers and support staff who really don't want to have to choose between their job and their right to vote. And we feel as though this bill limiting their ability to vote in a way that is where they don't have to feel as though they're being constricted by not having the proper voter ID or maybe having an issue with their social security number. We feel as though that would create an undue burden upon our bus drivers. So we have a position of opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, just one moment.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, the closed caption didn't pick up your name and who you represent, and I apologize. I couldn't hear you, so I was relying on the closed caption to say who you were and who you represent. I apologize, but I'm trying to read. Totally. I couldn't hear it either, and it didn't come up.
Wes Gibson with the Virginia Education Association.
Wes Gibson, Virginia Education Association.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good afternoon. Chris DeRosa with the League of Women Voters. We oppose SB 1073. Registrars already have many valid sources of information to use to verify voters' registration form. This bill would unnecessarily intimidate and prevent valid Virginia residents from voting in our elections, and it might also pose an undue extra burden on the registrars to take the time to verify Social Security numbers, and that, I suppose, will be a cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we have several online that's in favor. Please keep your comments. We're going to put it, can we put 30 seconds on there?
Clara, you may unmute your microphone and turn on your camera.
And just make sure you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm the chairman of Bill Wheeler. I'm from Albemarle County and the chairman of the electoral board in that locality. I speak strongly in favor of this. Both of the two major voting federal laws, the NVRNA and the HAVA, both require that the states maintain accurate voter registrations. The many states submit all of their voter registration lists to the Social Security Administration for verification to show that indeed the voter has submitted the correct Social Security number. This is a safeguard for the voters. Because if
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Melody Clark, you may unmute your microphone and turn on your camera.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to speak in favor of this bill, and I thank the senators for bringing it forward. It's unfortunate that we have so many measures that would help all Virginians, including your constituents, of the individuals who are voting against these measures. But this is a common sense, very easy measure that we wish you would join Virginia Institute Action in supporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne Gregorian, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Yes, well, since Senator Van Valkenburg isn't worried about the registrars, we don't have to worry that it makes extra work for them. But in addition to that, it's a requirement of the Constitution that Virginians provide their social security number if they have one to vote. I don't see where it's a problem to verify the information as SCOTUS has allowed that they provide. So I support this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Let's, I know you,
I would just like to respond to that slander.
She called you out?
Yeah.
All right, sir, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say, I didn't say we shouldn't regard the registrars. I said we should take the people into consideration before we should take the registrars into consideration. And I believe I noted that one of the big things we've done since we've expanded voting is to, for example, give them a pay raise, which I think is important. And we've clarified election procedures to help them. So she can be as flip as she wants, but I think we should prioritize people over registrars, and I don't think that's a controversial take.
Thank you, Senator. We have a number more. Oh, is there one in opposition? Whoever was in support of the bill, do we have them in opposition?
Those online in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand.
Two? We have two? All right. Please make sure your camera is on. Please, 30 seconds.
Kristen Sakos, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. You are muted.
Sorry, I'll get used to this by the end of the hearing. I'm Kristen Sakos from Charlottesville, testifying on behalf of the Virginia State Conference of the NAACP. I urge the members of the committee to vote against this bill, which would require affirmative confirmation of every voter's social security number before a registration is processed. Not only would this requirement impose undue and costly burdens on local offices of voter registration, it would slow the process of voter registration, which would likely lead to the denial of the right to vote to qualified residents because of this cumbersome and time-consuming process. Thank you.
Any comments from the members of the committee? Senator said that.
Just a question for the patron. He mentioned the individual who was charged with registering names off headstones in a graveyard in the western part of the state. I seem to recall a more recent example of non-citizens having to be removed from the voting rolls in the thousands, presumably.
Just Mr. Chair.
Sir?
Yes, Senator Sturman, correct. I'm sorry, that was actually the Valley, Senator Obenchain's 10, 20 years ago. Yeah, but what'd they do? Remove about 2,000 or something like that just off for the presidential election?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peake, I think it was more like 6,000 plus
6,000.
when it was being reported in the press more often, but wouldn't your bill help address problems like that as well?
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Sturman, excellent point. And to correct that last person who spoke against this bill, we're not requiring it of people who are already registered. Mm-hmm. This is just for new registrations going forward. So it's a very easy task for people who are registering going forward. They provide it. It would, so those 6,000 illegal people who registered or people who registered illegally would never have gotten registered because they would not have provided their social security numbers or it wouldn't have matched. So we would therefore be able to preserve the integrity of our elections and keep people from doubting the integrity of our elections, which is a huge problem right now.
Thank you, Senator. Is there a motion? There's a motion to remove report. It's been seconded. There's a substitute motion.
PBI.
Has it been seconded? It's been seconded. The motion is, substitute motion is to pass by indefinitely. Is it properly seconded? Please open the vote.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank you for your dignity and respect. When you kill my bills, it is a lot more pleasant than when they get killed in commerce and labor. That chairman can be mean and rude when he is killing my bills. So thank you, members of the committee.
Senator Peake. Senator Silvell, we'll have you since he has one bill. He has one bill. Senator Graves.
Push the PBI this one too.
Not again.
Yeah, we like to counter it.
Mr. Chairman, I got a substitute on this one.
And is there a motion? So moved. There's a second. It's a substitute before. Is all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Do we have it online, or do we have has it been updated? It's online. Do we have a?
It's pretty simple, and the sub's actually pretty close to the.
Would you like counsel to,
original bill? Sure.
To explain it for us, the substitute? Or would you like?
It just tweaks the period of time a court has to hear the case from 30 to 45 days, I think is the main thing the sub does.
The substitute, it is Bill 940. It's online.
It's not online?
Counsel can explain it.
So on line 21, it changes the 30-day deadline to 45 days, and then it says no later than 45 days from the request of a party for a hearing pursuant to this section, unless the parties agree otherwise. And then it used to be from the time the parties were purchased.
I got it. My bill was
Those bills should be filed within, and then it used to be 5 days, and now it's 7 days. And then of the circuit court's final order. So it establishes the period from which the appeal needs to be filed.
What was the last
It establishes that it has to be filed within 7 days of the circuit court's final order.
If you want to appeal the circuit court's decision, you got to do it within 7 days instead of right now it's 30. The default is 30.
Do you understand what the bill's, I mean?
I need to explain the bill. I haven't explained it
Okay,
yet.
explain the bill, but the substitute, is it online? It's online yet? It's not online?
I can walk you through it while it's posting. The sub just changes the deadlines a little bit.
Senator D-Step, did you want to talk or?
I've actually read the bill, understand the substitute, and sorry, Mr. Chair. I just had one question, and as I read this, I was going through the criteria, was trying to see which jurisdiction other than Fairfax would fall into the criteria we're referring to here.
Is this?
It applies to every court, every jurisdiction in the state. You're on 940?
940, I believe. Let me go back through and make sure.
940 is substitute.
Oh. No, I was looking at a different bill. I'm sorry. I apologize. Those are my notes on a different bill of yours.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Chairman, you want me to explain it while you guys are waiting?
Please explain it, yes.
Okay. So, I've been watching elections for a while, and in the last few years, I've noticed this increasing trend of people during elections waiting up until the very last second to challenge the papers that somebody filed way back at the beginning of the case to their ability to become a candidate. So there was one in Fairfax County this year where literally like 2 weeks before the election, somebody challenged somebody's petition signatures that they filed in, I think it was April. There was also a case in Virginia Beach where somebody tried it in a school board race where they waited until September after voting began to challenge the papers that somebody had filed. And to me, it's crazy. If you're going to challenge like whether somebody's petition signatures are valid or whether the signatures are right or all the people were in the district or whatever, it seems to me that ought to happen at the beginning instead of after voting begins. And so what this bill basically does is it says that if you're going to challenge a candidate's eligibility based on those kinds of things, you have to do it within 60 days of more than 60 days before the election. That way, the voting process doesn't get disrupted before the election. And I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that's one thing the committee might want to tweak because of the litigation period that this has. You might want to push it back so that the litigation occurs before early voting begins. That's one concern somebody gave to me.
Can I just ask for a clarifying question?
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So they'd have to file, so if you file your paperwork on March 1st, it would be, but the people could file until, you said the general election?
It's general and primary.
Or the primary election, okay.
Senator Sturtevant has a question.
And I just want to also make clear that the bill also accepts from this challenges to somebody's residency. And the reason I carved out residency and said this doesn't apply to residency is because residency is constitutional. And our residents today could be challenged. If we don't live in a house in our district today, we're no longer eligible to serve as a member of the Senate. And so I didn't want to put any kind of restriction or deadline on that.
So these are just statutory restrictions you're given period limitation.
Right, the certificate of candidate qualification, the petition
Senator
signatures, all that kind of stuff.
I may have answered my own question, or you may have just answered it, but the thing that occurred to me is what if you get notice of a problem after this deadline? And perhaps your answer is, well, you should have looked at the signatures well before then.
Right.
I think your bill is smart policy and a good idea. Is there anything we might be missing, however, by not having like a notice exception provision?
I just think everybody will claim they didn't get notice. I mean, I think a lot of people find out about stuff and they sit on it, wait till the last minute and try and pull some October surprise. And this kind of stuff to me is stuff that you should be able to discover. If you go look at the signatures, their petition signatures, their filing papers, all that stuff, you should be able to figure that out relatively close to when they file. I'm not sure what other kind of disqualifying factor there could be about somebody getting on the ballot than this, but I saw it happen twice in the last year, and I've seen it happen before. And it seems to me if you're going to challenge somebody's petition signatures, you ought to do it way before the election starts instead of, just so you know what happened in Fairfax, they filed suit, judge took somebody off the ballot, so they were off the ballot for like 3 days, then the judge granted a motion to reconsider, put them back on the ballot, then they went back to court again to argue about it again. The voters were all confused. The registrar didn't know whether to put the ballots in front of people. People didn't know whether to write in a name or not write in a name. It was complete chaos. It just seems to me all these things need to be sorted out before an election begins, or else the whole validity of the election could end up getting challenged if you're fighting about these things when an election's going on.
Can I ask? I'll ask.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Mr. Chair, so the one thing I'm wondering is, if you have to, is the last day that you would put in all your stuff if you're going to file for the election, say this upcoming November, it's the last day of March, right?
It's the end of March, or it used to be like April 20th, but it might be the end of March.
Yeah, so follow up, Mr. Chair.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
So wouldn't 60 days take us into early voting? So and what I'm getting at with that, right? So because April, May, the end of May, wouldn't that take us into the early vote? So I guess the question I'm asking is, wouldn't it be better to set it rather than 60 days to set it before the first vote is cast? And maybe not.
That's what I was saying, is the one piece of it that I've heard some feedback from people on is whether or not the deadline ought to be pushed backwards further. So the sub that you have before you, just to understand, the sub that you had before you, I originally had said that you have to litigate all this within 30 days. And the Supreme Court ran it by some judges. They didn't like that. They wanted 45 days. And they wanted 45 days from when the parties ask for a hearing. And if you follow those deadlines all the way out, you could still have litigation occurring during an election, during voting. And so, if you guys want to push the deadline further backwards than 60 days before the election, or you want to say 60 days before early voting starts,
Mr. Chair,
I'm fine with that. That might be a better way to do it.
You through with your questions?
Yeah.
Senator D-Staff.
Mr. Chair, I think Senator Peake just had the solution to that, limiting it to 14 days of early voting. And we wouldn't have that issue. We'd just kind of killed the solution to the problem here that we're seeing. But I think everybody likes the bill that we have before us. However, I think if we had Senator Peake's bill back, maybe we could fix the other side of it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
I'd rather have this problem than that problem. So.
I think if you said 45 days before the start of voting, then that would line up the litigation period that the Supreme Court asked for, the 45-day period, and ensure that at least the litigation in the circuit court would stay out of the voting period.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time visualizing the primary part of this, because the general election part of it makes a ton of sense. But the primary part, if the paperwork's not till the end of March, and the early vote I don't know when the early vote starts, but it's the end of May
45
sometime.
days out from the election day,
Senator
which
Cypher
now
said-
is like the third Tuesday in June. So it's like
It's like
June
the last
20.
week of May.
Your name has disappeared and that's reappeared. Do you still want to go? Okay, Senator Cyphers.
Yes, Mr. Chair. My question is regarding special elections. When we filed candidacy for District 10, it was like the second week of November, and the election was about 5 or 6 weeks later.
Yeah, and Brooks, I don't think this applies to specials, does it? I remember we or does it? We talked about how you had originally wrote it, and then we rewrote it to make sure it applied in generals and primaries.
I think it applies to every election.
Does it?
Yeah, so part B says the qualifications of a candidate who is nominated at a primary election shall not be subject to a challenge on the basis of the facts that were presented prior to the primary election and could have been raised as a challenge during the primary.
Senator Serval, I like the bill, but I think that the timing of when it's going to happen is critical. This shouldn't happen when people are voting.
Right.
I was wondering if maybe you and Van Valkenburg and Sturdivant could get together and kind of figure out how to answer some of those questions and bring the bill back to us.
Yeah, I can do that. It's not hard. It's just somebody needs to sit down with some calendars.
I'm sorry. Senator Diggs said something too.
Mr. Chair, question for the patron.
Okay.
Thank you. Was there any particular reason you choose to put it in court of the largest jurisdiction as opposed to the court where the candidate being challenged lives?
No, I knew that some elections or some districts go over multiple jurisdictions, and I thought somebody might strategically try to file on one circuit versus another where they can home cook it better or something. So I just wanted the bill to default,
you need to pick one place,
to something, so they weren't fighting about venue. I didn't come up with any particular reason. I was just picking one.
Honestly, I like to have something in print in front of me.
Yeah.
And we don't have a bill online. We don't have a printed bill. And I'm just thinking maybe legitimate questions have been raised, and if you could kind of get together with these guys and come up with something.
Okay.
Maybe by next Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's any fiscal impact, so it does need to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy to go by for the day.
Okay, the next person on the list is Delegate or Senator Williams Graves, who's been sitting out here.
We need to do a motion on taking the by for the day.
I don't. Okay. All in favor of taking the bill by for the day, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill's by. Senator Williams Graves.
Thank you. I have three bills. The first one is, wait a minute. Sorry. The first one is Senate Bill 991.
Senate Bill 991. Okay, turn your attention to Senate Bill 991, Senator Williams.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. 988. I apologize.
Senate Bill 988.
988. Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, just explain. Is there a substitute or any amendments? Okay, well, explain to us what the bill's intended to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill 988 is a provision to protect curbside voters. During the last couple of elections, it's been brought to my attention that when people come to vote curbside and they drive up, our wonderful volunteers and such will somewhat accost them in their cars and giving them all kinds of information, even after the registrar has been out to collect their voter ID. And so this bill simply makes the vehicle or the area for curbside voting, it makes that a part of the 40-foot line prohibition.
Okay, so you're saying 40 feet from the entrance to the polling place, plus 40 feet from the
plus the vehicle. Because if you're curbside voting, the voter is not getting out of the vehicle; they're in their vehicle.
What happens if the 40 feet where the political parties have their tables is set up at 40 feet, and then there's the next thing is a curb, and
as long as they're not bothering the voter in the vehicle. I mean, we can't have 40 feet from the curb and 40 feet from the door. But as long as once that voter has given their identification to the official voter registration, the State Board of Elections person, then that car, in essence, becomes the voting booth.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying, that the designated area, you basically could be putting political parties' tables 80 feet from the entrance. Is that a problem with the bill? Am I reading that correctly?
I think you're dead on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it would depend on the location of the curbside location. So it'd be 40 feet from the curbside location, but if the curbside location was like catty corner from where the door is and was 40 feet from the door, there would be a clear line of sight from the curbside to the door, but not out from the door. So it wouldn't necessarily be, it'd be 40 feet from the door, but then there'd be, it just depends on the location. But yes, it would be 40 feet from the curbside location in a circle, and then 40 feet from the door in a circle, and then however they overlap.
Is there any protection for people that are in a curbside area anywhere else in the code?
Mr. Chair, no. There are no prohibited areas around the curbside location currently.
Mr. Chair, I actually think there is that once they hand you your ballot in the vehicle, there's another section of code, I believe, that covers, you can't go up and hand them or talk to them once they receive their the ballot, the little electronic ballot machine from the voter registrar, because our voter registrar had to provide that to our one of the members that got a little aggressive and came out and said, hey, you can't do this, and this is a section of code you're violating. If you do it again, we're going to charge you.
I'm just wondering if there's somebody from the registrar, the State Board of Elections, that could probably educate us on this in this issue.
They're supposed to be.
Are there any other protections for curbside voters?
Mr. Chairman, members of Subcommittee, David Bailey with the Voter Registrar Association, and several of them are obviously watching the meeting, and one of them just sent me the message that says that curbside voters can park anywhere at the polling place, and that becomes the challenge. And I'm not certain about the question that was asked by the senator.
In some of the polling places that I'm familiar with, there are designated areas for curbside voting. Is that not the way it works everywhere?
Everywhere. Mr. Chair, there may be a designated area, but so for example, in the city of Norfolk, it is downtown in our city hall, which is a circle, somewhat like a roundabout. So any individual who is coming for curbside voting can park, and someone can come out to them in one of the parking spaces, or they can park in the circle, and there is not a specific 1, 2, 3 parking spaces for curbside voting.
You see what my problem is, though. You're the people that are doing politics out there. You're telling them they've got to be you've got to be 40 feet back, then 40 feet back again.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, not necessarily, but if the curb is right next to the 40 feet,
that the vehicle is inclusive in that 40 foot. The vehicle itself, once that person gives their information to the registrar, that vehicle then becomes a polling place. So it is in essence inside the 40-foot line, not adding an additional 40 feet.
But Mr. Chair, by that definition, it would. So because as soon as that car, so like if you're 40 feet from the door, but that 40 feet by the door is the parking lot, and then someone parks, every time they park, you have to move another 40 feet.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Senator Sturdivant?
Yeah, and I appreciate what the patron's trying to do, and I think there probably does need to be something to avoid the accosting of folks who are trying to vote in their car. But I think there's also kind of a notice problem that if somebody can do curbside voting and they can park anywhere, that puts people who are going up to hand them campaign literature in violation without necessarily knowing that they are a curbside voter at the time that they park in a.
Maybe it's just somebody that thinks they can park there and walk into the polling place. Right. And the guys who are doing politics, whether they're Democrat or Republican, don't know that they can't approach. Brooks, staff.
Mr. Chair, so section 24.2.649.1 requires that the area designated for voting outside of the polling place shall be within 150 feet of the entrance of the polling place. But it does need to be designated. So a curbside voting location should be designated. It doesn't say how big it has to be. It could be a whole roundabout, but it does need to be designated. And I'm pretty sure they all have some designation to show people.
Well,
this is
would it make more sense to say when it is designated, you can't approach those people? You can't? Yeah.
When the area, Mr. Chair, when the area is designated?
Yeah.
Okay. If that is, that's.
I think that might make more sense than Durant, Senator Durant. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to this, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to a solution. But I think we're all kind of appreciate. I wanted to reiterate that too. I saw this issue come up. I think it was 2 election cycles ago with some challenges that come with that, especially with curbside, and so I appreciate the opportunity. At least we try to work toward a solution. I hope we can get there. Thank you.
Senator Diggs is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill, many places the designated spot is just outside of the 40 feet or whatsoever, and we don't want to get it too far away so that the two don't overlap. They're in their car, maybe a lesser number such as 10 feet. I don't know that that's the right number. I'm just throwing a number out. It is, but I've seen people who are waiting want somebody to, do you have a sample ballot for me? And so that's a dilemma as well. I think you're trying to do a great thing. It's just the logistics of it are difficult.
Mr. Chair, Senator Graves, I believe you pointed this out, that once the election, this in 242604, once the election official approaches the car, now that becomes a polling place, so you can't give them literature, you can't do anything because there's no campaigning, bless you, there's no campaigning in a polling place. But I think that this may kind of already be done, because as the election officials approaching that vehicle, it's now a polling place, so everybody has to go away. And one of the voting officials texted me that, and then one of the ones who was at the poll I worked texted me the same thing. So I'm pretty sure that's covered, but I don't want to do any harm to the bill either. I think that once somebody approaches a vehicle, a polling official, now that becomes a polling place, and you can't mess with them anyway at that point.
Senator Van Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brooks, what's the penalty for, so I vote or walk within the 40 feet and then a Democrat or a Republican accosts me where they're not supposed to? What's the penalty for that?
Mr. Chair, Senator, I'm not seeing a specific penalty in that section, so it'd probably just be the general penalty for violation of 24.2, which would be, I believe, a misdemeanor violation.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I was going to say, why don't we just include, or, people who are in a car where there's been a designated polling spot, and then if a Democrat or a Republican goes to a car that's in a designated polling spot, that would be the same thing as going to the voter who is 20 feet away from the polling place. But it would have to be designated, right? Because otherwise, if you're just going up to cars, right? I mean,
the bill says on lines 40 and 41, within 40 feet of any area designated for voting outside of the polling place pursuant to 24.2-649.1. So it already says that, but that effectively could be 80 feet from the polling, you'd have to strike that language and come up with a new sentence or two. I mean, do you want to try to do that surgery now, or do you want to? Senator Sturdivant.
I think the other issue which you sort of raised at the beginning is
I mean, we have countless different setups of voting locations across the Commonwealth, public libraries and registrar's offices and schools. I mean, it's hard to make a one-size-fits-all approach here.
It is. I want to try to help get you up. If you feel like you need something here, I want to try to help Norfolk out, but I don't want to screw it up for everybody else.
Understood, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, is there another PUD meeting?
I think there'll be a meeting next Tuesday, and I'm wondering if you could maybe
pass
work
this
with
back
staff
to
and figure out. Brooks, you know what we're talking about. We're just trying to do something without getting anybody in trouble. Senator Cyphers, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe it's the wrong tool for the job. Maybe the restriction should be how close that people can approach vehicles. In general, for me, if I pull up at a polling location, I would just assume be able to get out of my car before being accosted.
Wait till you want to read it.
Okay, can we?
If we can just pass the bill by for the day.
Okay.
Is that all right? So we've got a motion and a second. And all in favor of passing the bill by for the day? Okay, that's what we've done. Senator Obenchain, I've done a heck of a job chairing this meeting, I guess. I haven't gotten anything done. Senator Obenchain, let's get something done. Oh, you've got two more bills. I apologize.
More bills.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I turn your attention to Senate Bill 991.
Okay. Okay. 991. Okay. Senator Williams-Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 991 it reduces from 21 days to 10 days the number of days in which registration records are closed before primary and general election, and it reduces from 13 to 10 days the number of days in which registration records are closed before special elections. Right now, we have two different dates for when folks can register to vote in person and from when their last day is to turn in an absentee ballot, or to request rather an absentee ballot. What this does is just bring all of those dates in line for the same date. So with the last day to register to vote and the last day to request an absentee ballot are now 10 days prior to Election Day, and that's when the rolls will close.
My last act as chair of this committee will be to ask you where this bill came from. What?
This bill actually came from the registrars.
Registrars, okay.
And they're here to answer any questions.
Concept.
Okay, have we, okay, let me see. You did opposition support?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. Is anyone speaking in support of this bill? Please come forward.
Those online that wish to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand.
And you have a total of 3 minutes?
Mr. Chairman, members.
For the entire group. I want to make that clear. Okay. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Bailey, on behalf of the Voter Registrar Association, we support this bill and think it will be a good improvement. Appreciate the senator introducing it and hope you will support it.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Chris DeRosa, League of Women Voters of Virginia. We support this bill. This would spare voters who might otherwise be compelled to cast provisional ballots using same-day registration opportunities. Would also reduce the number of provisional ballots by shortening the period in which ballots would be provisional. It would reduce the burden on the registrars, who then would have fewer provisional ballots to curate. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, for those members online, if you're in support, please make sure your camera is on, and each of you have 30 seconds.
Galen Knoyton, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Galen Knoyton, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Kristen Sakos, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Hi, again, Kristen Sakis from Charlottesville with the NAACP, and I urge you to support this bill. It increases the likelihood of people being able to register to vote before the election, increasing enfranchisement, which is good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie Isles, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Stephanie Isles, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Hi, thank you so much. Stephanie Isles, I'm the Director of Elections and General Registrar for the City of Norfolk. We'd like to thank Senator Williams-Grace for introducing this legislation on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association. This will encourage voters and give them more time for ballot access and make the deadline to register the same day to request an absentee ballot. So we are very much in support of this bill. Thank you.
Clara, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Clara Wheeler, Chairman of the Albemarle County Electoral Board. I have a question for this bill, more than a support or opposition. When you say days, do you mean business days, or are you including Saturdays and Sundays?
Ma'am, we're not taking questions online. You can state your support or opposition or independent of the topic at hand. Okay, do we have any more online in support? No? All right, anyone here in opposition?
Those online that are in opposition, please raise your hand.
All right, I have Senator Sturdivant in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question for Mr. Bailey with the registrars of what is the problem that we are seeking to fix here? And is this something that all of the registrars have asked for?
Yes, sir. The association has, and as far as we know, we haven't heard contrary opinions from other registrars. When you cut off at 21 days, certainly you could have more people than that having to vote provisionally or have to come back later. If you allow the registration to go ahead and take place up until 10 days, it should shorten some of the work. I think in the presentation that the commissioner made about to the committee about the number of provisional ballots that are cast, a certain portion of them are because of this extra period of time. And I think that the registrars tell me the history of this was before there were poll books, that you needed the 21 days. And now with everyone having poll books, that it's not needed.
Mr. Chair.
Senator, this motion to report, is there a second?
Second.
And now you have the final word, Senator.
Thank you. I just would like to answer the question. 10 days or 10 days, they're listed as they are. It's there. If they're not listed as 10 business days, they are presumed to be 10 calendar days. And the way the statute reads now, it's days. So those are days, not calendar or not business days, but calendar days.
Thank you, Senator. We have a motion and a second before us. Please open the vote.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Bill reports. Do you have any more bills before our committee?
Yes, I do. I have one more.
All right.
Senate Bill 994. Senate Bill 994 was also a request from the Registrars Association. It increases the 40-foot line to 100 feet. The areas around polling places, certain electoral board meetings, and recount locations within which certain activities or conduct are prohibited. Extensions of the prohibited area for electioneering and certain other activities would extend from 40 feet to 100 feet. Updates to laws governing campaigns, firearms possession, and observer rules are within this expanded area. It maintains access for authorized representatives, media, and neutral observers with restrictions to ensure election integrity and voter privacy. Increasing the distance reduces potential voter intimidation or disruption near the polling place. 23 out of 50 states have the 100-foot standard.
So,
Senator Deeds.
so we're going 100 feet here plus the 40 feet in your other bill. So 140 feet before the Democrats and Republicans can put out their tables.
Mr. Chair, Senator Dees, we're going to work on the other bill.
Okay.
And we're going to work on this one separately.
Okay. But this is still 100 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak in support of this legislation?
Those online that wish to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand.
Sir, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the Registrars Association supports this bill also. In fact, some have expressed the opinion that maybe if you move it to 100 days, it may solve that other issue.
I'm sorry, sir?
100 feet.
Okay, all right.
100 days. Let's scare people about 100 days and 45. Yeah. I think that all of the neighboring states, I'm told, except one, have 100 feet prohibition area. And we think that that may solve the other problem that you've been addressing that's being held over, but we do support this bill.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone online? Two online, please have your camera on. Each have 30 seconds.
Clara, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Clara Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board. I would invite you to look at multiple precincts. All precincts are different. They all have different parking. They all have different geography. 100 feet is a long way when you're talking about, and Senator Dees is agreeing, it's prohibitive in terms of getting parking and having voters get into the polling place. It's really a long way, and I would invite you to not support this bill for that reason.
Thank you, ma'am. So she spoke in opposition of the bill, so please note that. Is there anyone online speaking in support of this legislation? Yes. One more. All right. Please have your camera on and 30 seconds, please.
Stephanie Isles, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Hi, Stephanie Isles, Director of Elections and General Registrar for the City of Norfolk. Extending the 40-foot line would not only help with the curbside voting issue that we were discussing earlier, it would also help voters that are faced with walking that gauntlet of campaign electioneers on their way in to cast their ballot. But it really provides for our curbside voters, and it would make us very similar to most of our surrounding counterparts who have at least 100 feet of protection when coming to the polling place. So we encourage you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the bill?
Those online that wish to speak in opposition, please raise your hand.
Is there anyone online speaking in opposition? Yes, is that the young lady who just spoke? No. All right. Please have your camera on and have 30 seconds.
Anne Gregorian, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Yeah, I don't know if I oppose it or support it, but I would like to say that it would be better to make it optional, minimum of 40 feet, maximum of 100 feet, because that would push some people out in the middle of the roadway or way across the street where I live when you're out canvassing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, members of the committee, I see Senator D. Stuff is in the queue.
Mr. Chair, Senator Williams-Graves, on Norfolk with the City Hall precinct, I think that 100 feet would be great for that. I don't see any issues. But some of the other precincts, 100 feet would put them in the middle of the street. And I do see an issue with that because there would be no place to set up. And now the only place that you would have signs and everything would be literally on the street. So to get into the precinct on one of the ones that I'm thinking of, the the entrance is about 60 feet. So you'd have to go, I don't even know where you would go to put signs, but you'd have to be in the street itself or on the other side, which is woods in a big, deep ditch. So I don't know where you would engage voters. So I think that might be a little too far. Maybe you change it to an option like the young lady who spoke last, but I think that there's some issues on this one still.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I want to throw into the ether too. One thing that worries me a little bit is, folks who have partisan elections. I think this is what maybe should give us a little less angst in the sense that there's a huge education effort that goes on, but also when you go into the ballot box, there's that D or the R by the name that provides some level of education. Oftentimes when we're talking about the people going to the polls, the people who are often the most rabid to their detriment are local government folks who are freaked out, right? Because nobody really knows who they are, and they don't have the TV ads, they don't have the money, and a lot of their election strategy is around the precincts. And I do think we should be cognizant of that. 100 is a long way. I'm thinking about a lot of our precincts. I think some optional number that's like maybe smaller than that might make sense, but 100's a long way.
And Senator Sturdivant, I'll go after you have your comments.
Yeah, I think just reiterating the point that Senator Van Valkenburg made, I think in some polling places, you go to 100 feet, you're not going to be on the property of the polling location. And then you have trespassing issues and can cause some challenges. So yeah, I'm not sure what the solution is, but I think there are some issues.
Senator Graves, would you consider a friendly amendment if that number instead of was 100 feet, say 60 feet? And I'm just trying to think if that's amenable to certain locations geographically that would still be able to have folks set up and able to pass out election material. I think 60 feet would probably suffice, but I am open to the comments and will of the body if they think 60 feet would suffice. But I think there is an issue with 100 feet. I think you got to be specific with.
Yeah, I mean.
So, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I am told that one of our neighboring states has language similar to what was proposed by the young lady who spoke for or against, I can't remember, but at least 40, no more than 100. So there is some variation available there. So that could be an amendment, or at least 40, no more than 60, or no more than 7. We could do some variation.
Mr. Chair, my concern is that there are some volunteers that live to work elections. I would prefer to not have to work an election, not have to work on a table. But a lot of people really believe that matters, and they like to be touched. And honestly, I'm not sure that I'm willing to leave up to registrars and electoral boards what the distance is. I think we've said in the code it's 40 feet. If you move it beyond 40 feet, I can think of multiple polling places where the tables would be out in the street or on an adjacent property where they wouldn't be allowed. I think if we want to say that there's no electioneering at polling places, that's a policy statement we can make, and maybe that's what the registrars really want. But I'm not sure. I'm not in favor of moving it beyond 40 feet.
So I think so we can gently have this go by. We can have this go by if there's a motion.
Well, don't let it go by for the day. If there's a way, if you want to work on it, I mean, and somebody, I'm just speaking for myself, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think there's a real concern about geography in terms of 100 feet. There is uniformity throughout Virginia when it comes to our election sites, and so,
Mr. Chair,
this probably needs a little bit more work.
Can I, real quick? Yeah, Mr. I don't often say this. But I think we should probably hear from some local elected officials about how they feel about the measurements. Because I'll go back to my previous point. I actually really do think that this impacts them more than it impacts us at the state or federal, us at the state level or federal officials.
Yeah. So this bill will go by, and perhaps some more discussion on it before it comes back to committee.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Out there. We have Senator Obenshain is here with a constitutional amendment.
It's good to see you. Yes. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you called me earlier. I appreciate your courtesy in passing it by temporarily, that is.
So we have SJ 271 in front of us. Yes. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 271 is the right to work constitutional amendment. We spent a lot of time today talking about submitting important issues to the voters, and this is one more that I think that we ought to submit to the voters. The vast majority of the states that are listed in CNBC's top 20 states for doing business in America are right-to-work states. We've got a choice. Are we going to stay a right-to-work state? Are we going to retain our status as a vibrant, growing state? Or are we going to join the members of the Rust Belt, most of whom are not right-to-work states, and allow efforts to undermine our right-to-work law? I would point out that this amendment was on the ballot in 2016. And I traveled the state campaigning for it. And I crossed paths with my friend, then, I don't know, I guess Senate Minority Leader, who is sincerely my friend. And he made arguments all over his state that we don't need this. There is no threat to our right-to-work laws in Virginia. Don't pass this. I read with great interest the articles, editorials in the Richmond Times-Dispatch and some other newspapers that said, we don't need this. There is no indication that there is an effort to undermine our right-to-work laws. That failed at the ballot. And promptly, upon the disposition of that constitutional amendment, there were multiple bills that were introduced in the General Assembly that would have repealed the Right to Work Act in the Commonwealth of Virginia or significantly weakened the right to work laws in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I would point out that this constitutional amendment, as it's drafted, is pro-worker. It doesn't prohibit the joining of unions. It doesn't encourage it. It prohibits discrimination against employees, whatever choice they make. They can choose to join a union, and many of them will, or they can choose not to join a union. And if they choose to join a union, they can't be fired for that making that choice. If they choose not to join a union, they can't be fired for not joining a union. This is, I believe, a fair piece of legislation that protects our status here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, ensures that we remain a vibrant, growing economy in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's an opportunity for each of us to reaffirm our commitment to our right to work laws here in Virginia.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Deeds.
Mr. Chair, as the Senator pointed out, this was on the ballot in 2016. I think the voters pretty overwhelmingly rejected it. I'm wondering if the language of the amendment has changed at all from the 2016.
This is the same language.
Same language.
Same language.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, comment for the patron. I mean, this seems like a very pro-worker statement. I mean, as I'm reading this, and I think as you just explained it, it would make it unlawful to deny or attempt to deny employment to any person because that person is a member of a union. Is that right?
That's exactly right. You've read almost the entirety of the resolution. It protects the choice with respect to joining or resignation from, affiliation with or disaffiliation with a labor union or an employee organization.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone, before I see Senator Cipher, you are in the queue. Is there anyone here to speak in support? You have anyone in support?
Those
Your
online
legislation?
that wish to speak in support, please raise your hand.
Is there anyone online? How many? One. You have 30 seconds. Are you here to speak in support of the legislation? Sir, please come to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Are you speaking in support as well? Okay, please allow 3 minutes total.
Hi, Brandon Robinson, representing the Associated General Contractors of Virginia. So on behalf of our hundreds of members and the thousands of workers they employ in the Commonwealth who currently have the choice to join a union or to not join a union. And we have within our membership, we have contractors who have a union side and a non-union side, and workers have that choice to choose whether or not they want to join the union or whether or not they don't. And still complete the work. So on behalf of those workers in our companies, we adamantly support this.
Thank you, sir.
Julia Hammond on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors, Virginia Chapter, and the National Federation of Independent Business, Virginia Small Business Trade Association. We too support this amendment. We support the choice that it puts inside the Constitution. Much like other constitutional amendments discussed, choice is very important. We support that for our members. Thank you.
We have 2 online, 30 seconds each.
Clara, you may unmute your microphone and turn on your camera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As a supporter of everyone's right to choose, and as a small business owner, I strongly support workers' right to choose to either be a member of a union or to not. People want to work. They should not have to go through leaps and bounds with unions if they don't choose to do so. I support this bill and appreciate that Senator Ogletree has brought it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melody Clark, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone. Melody Clark, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Okay. All right. Those in opposition, please come to the podium.
Those online that wish to oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
Just one moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. You all have a total of 5 minutes total. You may go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Doris Krause-Mays, and I'm president of the Virginia AFL-CIO, and we stand in opposition to this. As it was mentioned, this was on the ballot in 2016, and voters overwhelmingly defeated this constitutional amendment. We should be focused on things that benefit workers, like raising the minimum wage and giving all public service workers the freedom to collectively bargain. And if we want to talk about choices for workers, and that is our interest, then workers should have the choice to join a union if they want to, in an atmosphere that is free of intimidation and fear. So why don't we have collective bargaining for all state employees, all public employees, and let's raise the minimum wage for all workers. That is being pro-worker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be fairly brief here, calling an audible, if you will. I had a lot of information I was going to go through at first. But yesterday, we celebrated the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he had a tremendous impact on this nation and helped us kind of chart a better society that is inclusive for everybody. One of the things that maybe some of our distinguished members sitting in here aren't aware of is that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in addition to civil rights, he also worked very heavily with unions. As a matter of fact, he lost his life in, Memphis, thank you. He lost his life in Memphis while protesting and marching with the sanitation workers because they weren't being treated with dignity and respect. And so for me, as a proud member and president of Teamsters Local 322, I find it disingenuous to say that this is pro-worker when the reality is, in Dr. King's own words, he said, "In our glorious fight for civil rights, we must guard against being fooled by false slogans, such as right to work. It is a law to rob us of our civil rights and our job rights. In addition to that, Dr. King worked heavily with unions, and the Teamsters actually supported Dr. King. They donated money to him and helped him out with his efforts too. So we stand and oppose to this. My name is Brian Payton too, by the way. Thank you.
You have 2 minutes for the entire group, so please.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Julia Newton. I am with SCIU, Virginia 512. We strongly oppose this bill. It was on the ballot in 2016, and the voters rejected it, and SCIU, Virginia 512, rejected as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Alexandra Margarin, SCIU Local 32BJ. We strongly oppose this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kayla Mock with United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 400. We represent over 35,000 workers in grocery, retail, frontline, and essential. We also align our comments with those spoke before us. We are strong opposition to this bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kirk Jones. I represent the A. Philip Randolph Institute. We oppose this resolution. We urge you to not vote to report it out of committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nikki Robinson with CWA, Communication Workers of America, and we also oppose this bill. Thank you.
Just one online, please ensure that your camera is on. You have 30 seconds.
Kristen Sakas, you may turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Yes, the NAACP stands in strong opposition to this amendment, which enshrined Virginia's right to work law into the Constitution, permanently inhibiting the ability of Virginia workers to organize. Right to work laws weaken unions, drive down wages and benefits, and compromise safety in the workforce. I urge you to vote against this amendment. Thanks.
Thank you. In the queue, we have Cyphers, and then Jennifer Carroll, Foy, then Sturdivant. So, Senator Cyphers, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to speak from personal experience as it relates to this topic. My own career was started in a manufacturing company that was not a union company. Because of the environment there in which I had a direct relationship with my employer, I didn't have two bosses. And because of that, I was able to build a very successful career in that company, which led to all of the success that I've had in life after that, including the ability to create a similar environment of opportunity for the people that have worked for me in my businesses, Yakatech. We've taken multiple employees from minimum wage, or our minimum hiring wage, which has never been minimum wage, by the way, from our minimum hiring wage to positions as high as Director of Engineering. Through this direct relationship, and having more parties involved does not always facilitate a better outcome. There's nothing that prohibits people from joining unions. We don't want an environment that prohibits people from having direct relationships with their employers.
Senator Carol Foy.
I'll defer to Senator Sturdivant and speak after him.
Okay. Senator Sturdivant, then Duran is in the queue. You want to? Okay. Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I'm kind of confused. I mean, I understand that there's a political aspect to this, but the language of the proposed constitutional amendment says that it is unlawful for any person, corporation, association, or this Commonwealth to deny or attempt to deny employment to any person because of such person's membership in a labor union. And so I can't imagine a better protection for union members than putting this protection, preserving their right to work in a labor union in the Constitution. I mean, again, I recognize that there's a political aspect to this, that I guess there's a desire to not allow folks who don't want to join a union to not have to. But I guess I'm sort of really kind of shocked that the unions we heard testify today would be opposed to having this language in the Constitution.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Durant, then Senator Diggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill or to the proposed amendment, to me, it's just patently clear that without having this protection, moving forward, and if this does, it will change the landscape of the direction of where we're moving in Virginia, which is clearly been in the right one. CNBC has recognized Virginia as best state for business. We've repeatedly received awards and recognition for innovation, for site plan development, and I think right now here's the moment where we know where we'd be heading if we did not have it clearly. And I say this as a daughter of my father, who was a member of the union, but he was not compelled. He did this on his own volition, and it is important to note that distinction. So thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing this to the General Assembly.
Senator Diggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the bill.
You have the floor, sir.
This is certainly not an anti-union bill. Unions are in Virginia today. I think they're, as evidenced by those members who spoke today. This is a pro-choice for workers. It gives them a choice. Unions have the opportunity, and it's incumbent upon them to prove their values to workers so that they can decide on their own whether they want to pay union dues. They should not be forced to pay union dues. The only people I know that can legally force money out of people's pocket is us up in here, the government. So this is an important right that actually does protect workers and give them a choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the resolution, and then I have a motion.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as was previously mentioned very briefly, that yesterday was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, and I would like to remind the body of his full quote in 1961, because I think it's very apt for this moment, when he said, quote, "Right to work is a false slogan because right to work laws provide neither rights nor work and are in fact designed to rob us of our civil rights and job rights and to destroy labor unions and the freedom of collective bargaining by which unions have improved wages and working conditions of everyone," end quote. So I understand that there may be some sentiments about what this resolution will do and won't do, but at the end of the day, you take objection to what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has pointed out and not so much of what the people on this dais has. It is also worth noting that, as was briefly mentioned, Virginia rejected this very proposition to add right to work for less in the Virginia Constitution. Virginians have voted, the voters have spoken, and Virginians have rejected this measure. So instead of the time being used to undo the will of Virginians, we should be using this time to actually effectuate bills and budgets that's going to uplift and help Virginia workers. Virginia workers are the most talented and hardworking in the world and deserve good wages, safe working conditions, to have access to affordable health care, to work one job and put food on the table, to keep more money in their pocket, to retire with dignity. So the bills and budgets and resolutions that come before us to effectuate this, that's what I want to talk about, not a failed measure that Virginians have already voted down. This is the American contract. And throughout our country's history, unions have made this American contract a reality. It is the most effective and efficient way to build out our middle class, to uplift workers, to continue to make sure that Virginia is not only the best place for business, but also the best place to live, work, and raise a family. This resolution, this proposed constitutional amendment is anti-worker, it is anti-union, and I move that we pass by indefinitely.
There was a motion. We have a second. Second. And Senator, you have the last words before the chair makes comment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. A couple of things I'd point out. The vote was not overwhelming back in 2016, as is evidenced by the pie chart I am displaying. It was a single-digit margin, and I would respectfully submit that it was a vote that was motivated in large part by the pronouncements of members at the time of this body that the right to work laws were not going to be challenged. And I would respectfully submit, and I appreciate Senator Carol Foy's candor and her comments, but those comments make it clear that our right to work laws are controversial, and that's what we're here for, is we're entitled to fair-minded differences on issues that are important to us, and this is important to Senator Carol Foy, it's important to me too. We just happen to have a different opinion on this. And as Senator Diggs pointed out, as is evidenced by the robust union representation here in this room today, we have strong labor organizations in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have right to work laws right now. And those right to work laws have not inhibited the ability of labor unions to organize or union members to join. And they have not inhibited the growth of our economy here in the Commonwealth of Virginia or the industry of our citizens. I would respectfully submit that this is simply giving a choice to the voters of Virginia. Let the voters decide. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion and a vote, and I provide comments. You know, again, I can't put it as eloquently as Senator Carol Foy, but as a member of a union myself, the AFL-CIO, NFL-PA, unions are under attack today. We see that from the new administration that's came in. We understand that throughout the nation, that unions are under attack. Union busting techniques are happening today. And so what we need to understand is that the federal minimum wage, even the minimum wage that Democrats tried to pass, has not kept up with the cost of living. It has not kept up with the fact that healthcare costs has risen. It's not kept up with the fact that folks are having to decide between keeping a roof over their head or putting clothes on their back or even childcare, putting gas in the car. These are all issues that's relevant upon making sure that people's dignity is reflected in their paycheck, something that unions stand strong for. Because at a time where we have seen the largest wealth income gap, where 99% of the wealth is accumulated in the top 1%, who's speaking for the little guys? And this is what unions do. So I am proud to be a part of a union. This is why we must continue to fight for the raise of a minimum wage, where the federal minimum wage has stayed the same for quite some time. I believe it's only $7.50. I think that is it, if I'm not mistaken, maybe $7.25. Someone can correct the record later. But here we only raised the state minimum wage to $12.41. So I would surmise that the voters have already voted this down in 2016. It's the same exact language. What we need to start doing is bringing language forward to solidify union support throughout not only Virginia, but throughout our country in a time that is really needed. With that,
Mr. Chairman, do I get the last word?
You already had the last word, sir. Thank you.
I don't think that was the last word.
I gave you a last word, and then the chair has opportunity to have the last word and speak. With that, I call the vote. Please open the vote.
Ayes 8, no 7.
That bill is passed by definitely on a vote 8-7. Thank you, Senator.
Members of the committee, thank you for your courtesy.
We have Senator Roan. And if Senator Roan would just have you note, if the bill reports, it has to be re-referred to finance.
All right, gotcha. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is SB 1044. Before I get started, we've got an amendment on line 23, introduced after separately strike the remainder of line 23. all of lines 24 and 25.
Senator, is that amendment online?
That amendment should be available to you. I will defer to council for that.
Okay, can the council explain the amendment? Or, I mean, Senator, did you explain the amendment?
Oh, yeah, it's just basically, it strikes the remainder of line 23 after the word separately, all of lines 24 and 25, and through day on line 26. This basically, we talked to the registrars. This just gives them a little extra time to work things out.
All right, thank you. The amendment is before us. So moved. There's a motion. Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. The amendment is accepted.
Cool. So here's what we're doing here. So if you all go to the Department of Elections website, and I promise this presentation will not be partisan like we saw the last vote. Department of Elections website, right now, you can see how early votes, so basically early in person, absentee by mail, and those post-election ones that, as long as they are postmarked by Election Day and they arrive by Friday, that they're tallied. And you can see by locality how many they have, and then all of those get reallocated back to a precinct. Doesn't change the outcome at all. It just gives us better data. And so if you go to the Department of Elections website, you can see all these tallies in the last presidential race, for example, how many votes were cast early, on Election Day, mailed absentee, post-election, and then we get into provisional ballots. What's different with provisional ballots compared to the absentee ones is that those are not broken down by precinct, so they don't get reallocated right now. A few years ago, we passed a bill that reallocated all the mail-in ballots and the in-person early votes, but we didn't do it for provisional. Why is it important now versus then? Since then, we've adopted same-day voter registration over the last couple of years, and last year in Virginia, during the presidential election, we had a dramatic increase in provisional balloting. And that total from last year in the presidential contest was 114,923 votes. Now, all of those, we know what the totals were on the local level. So your city, we know what they were. We know what they were for your county. And if you had a town-only race, we know what they were for towns. We don't know how many of those go back to a precinct. So let's say, for example, if you represent College Town and you had a lot of same-day voter registration, it's still only populating in the entire city or the entire county. It's not populating back to the precincts.
Thank you, Sid.
So,
Senator
Yes, do you have anyone speak in support of the bill that came? Okay.
Those online that
And,
wish to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand.
brevity is your friend here. Yeah, understand. We have a process, but I understand.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Bailey on behalf of the Registrar Association. We want to thank Senator for making amendments that make this administration of this something will work. It's a policy decision, which we have no position on that, but we thank you for making it something that is workable if you choose to pass it.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, one? All right, are you sure they're in support of the bill? Okay. All right, 30 seconds.
Clara, you may unmute your microphone and turn on your camera.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand to speak in support of this bill because it will increase the uniformity, one of my very favorite words on the Albemarle County Electoral Board, of our elections. If you're going to report precincts, which we do, for in-person absentee and mails back absentee ballots, and certainly the election on Election Day is reported by precinct, why wouldn't you also report the provisionals?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Just one second, Senator Van Valken. Anyone in opposition in the room? Is anyone in opposition online?
Those online that are in opposition, please raise your hand.
Okay,
Move the report as amended and re-refer to finance.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any comments from members of the committee? Please open the vote.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Bill reports.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Now we'll start taking members on the committee. Senator Salim.
Here.
Who's here? Oh, now we're here. Okay. Yes, Salim, you can come up. And sir, did you, if your bill reports, it does have to go to finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 1009 is a minor adjustment to the existing pilot program established in 2020 that allows localities to adopt ranked choice voting for city council and board supervisors. This bill would specifically give localities the flexibility to include mayor and or school board in their ranked choice voting adoption. Clarifying the scope of the existing law, it also includes some technical amendments, which is a response to the 2023 elect report, similar to the bill that was passed in the House and the Senate in 2024. What this really does is it brings the ranked choice voting, the concept of that to your mayor's race, your specific locality's race. It does not change existing laws that are already in the book. Just clarifies and continues the concept of ranked choice voting. And I do have some folks that are here that would like to speak on this as well.
So anyone here to speak in support of the bill, please come forward.
Those online that are in support, please raise your hand.
A total of 5 minutes total for the group. And that's 5 minutes for the entire group. Thank you. You may begin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Liz White. I'm the Executive Director of Upvote Virginia. I'm here to speak in support of this bill. Every one of our 133 localities is unique and has their own dynamics to their elections. This bill allows those localities that choose to use ranked choice voting to do so in a way that makes sense for them. I would really appreciate your support on this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chris DeRosa, representing the League of Women Voters. The League supports SB 1009. This includes the expansion of ranked choice voting to any race for a local office. We believe that ranked choice voting, or RCV, makes our elections more accessible, promotes candidates with broad support, and ensures that every voter's voice is heard, particularly with the specific rules provided in this bill for conducting such elections. Thank you.
Shane Crow with Upvote Virginia. I'm trying to keep this brief as possible. We're all familiar with the old saying, two's company, three's a crowd. I'd like to extend the saying to say anything greater than three is a crush. So in the last few years, we've had examples of local races that have had crowded fields. In Arlington's sheriff race, in the last couple of cycles, we had a crowd. In Loudoun County's school board races in Broad Run and Leesburg, we've had crowds. In Newport News's mayoral race in the last few years, they've had a crush with more than three. And here in the city of Richmond, we have had anywhere from 6 to 8 candidates running for that field. All of these are local races. All of these have crowded fields, and all of these are races which are currently not covered under the ranked choice voting local option. So this legislation would help expand the option to include these races. And on top of that, as Senator Salim mentioned before, it would also increase election security by giving elect a request to implement a certification process for electronic voting equipment as well. So I stand in support. Thank you again.
Mr. Chair, Committee, I'm Fatima Mowahed with the Humanization Project. We support this bill because it provides each community the opportunity to choose how to best get voters' voices heard for all local offices, not just some. We work with people whose votes are least represented, but whose lives are most impacted by the decisions of elected officials. This is a route to allow every jurisdiction to choose how to make every vote count the way that fits their community. The last Norfolk City Council election is a perfect example of when this option may be valuable for local residents. While we believe Councilman Clanton will do a fine job, his victory reflected just 22% of local voters. If Norfolk residents believe that ranked choice options would be better suited to ensure everyone's preferences are reflected in the final winner, we believe they should be able to make that choice. Please support the bill. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Mike Cantwell. I'm here representing Veterans for All Voters. We strongly support this bill. This is a very small lift for the General Assembly, and we just want to make sure that mayors and school boards can vote for this. Mayor Philip Jones eloquently wrote about his support for this. He's a Naval Academy graduate and a Marine Corps veteran. And so I strongly encourage you, I hope to get bipartisan support for this bill, to support this bill. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Krista Rosa from Arlington. This time I'm speaking as myself. As a longtime volunteer in my community, I helped to bring ranked choice voting to Arlington and help to educate voters. We've used it 3 times in our elections. They were run very well by our registrar, Gretchen Reinmeyer, and voters like it and would like to see it continued. This bill would allow all localities, including towns, to use ranked choice voting, and it will also allow them to use it for all local elections. With ranked choice voting, voters do not need to worry about wasting their vote. We have a broad coalition of support for your candidates. We have more positive campaigns. So we hope that you will report this to the Senate floor to be voted on. Thank you.
Is there anyone here speaking in opposition of the bill?
Those online that are in opposition, please raise your hand.
All right. Is there any comments by members of the committee? Is there a motion? Yeah, hold on, I'm sorry. We have 3 online in opposition of the bill? Okay, 30 seconds each.
Anne Gregorian, you may begin.
Yes, thank you. We were just talking about precinct reporting. Ranked choice voting is impossible to report by precinct after the first ranking. And in addition, I've been to Ms. White's training, and anytime anybody asks about tabulation, her organization recommends that you deflect with your elevator speech and direct them away from tabulation because it's too confusing for the voter. So I disagree with ranked choice voting at the moment. I don't think it can be tabulated accurately or by precinct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melody Clark, you may begin.
Melody Clark on behalf of Virginia Institute Action. We are opposed to ranked choice voting because the ballots in ranked choice voting are more complex than the traditional one person, one vote. It is a fact that districts using ranked choice voting have lower turnout year over year than those that do not once they implement ranked choice voting. It also causes delays in the election process. And legislators supporting ranked choice voting typically are overwhelmingly, this legislation is sponsored by legislators with the weakest potential to win re-election.
Thank you, ma'am.
Clara, you may begin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranked choice voting was placed on multiple state ballot issues in multiple states in the November election, and only 2 localities, the District of Columbia and 1 other state, voted to continue ranked choice voting. The others voted to either never initiate it or to remove it from their use. It is very confusing. It is difficult to educate the public, and any effort to expand it will indeed continue to foster that confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have a motion to report and refer to finance. It was properly second. Please open the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
It's 8-7, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Suderline is not here. Pavola, I know, is still chairing the committee. So I'll do my bills. Well, we'll go with yours, Senator Van Valkenburg. I believe you have SB 119.
Show up. Just come to the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 1119, which aligns the primary elections and presidential election years for all offices in one, rather than having two separate primaries like we have now. As we have prescribed that all party nominating processes include active duty military, students, and people with disabilities, there's been a significant increase in the number of primaries for both parties, rather than, say, conventions. With our increase in the number of primaries and 45 days and all of that stuff, it makes sense to, somebody said 100 days. It makes sense to put these two elections into one. It also causes a lot of voter confusion, brings down turnout in the congressional races because everybody assumes that the primary is in the presidential primary, which gains more oxygen. And so this aligns the primary dates on presidential election years to the presidential primary. It makes no changes to the number of petition signatures required. It would allow, in theory, more time to gather those, but it's reduces a little bit of burden on the registrars, our good friends. It ensures that voters understand that that there's one primary. It's easier for voters, and it syncs up those congressional and presidential primaries. Just in that year. So it's not affecting state elections. It's not affecting midterm elections.
Senator,
I think it's a good idea, but it's worth debating. Yeah.
Senator Deeds.
Yep.
So Senator Van Valkenburg, the presidential election or presidential primaries like in February, and under the current calendar, a congressional primary would be in June. Is that right?
Yeah, it moves it up. So yeah, but Mr. Chair, Senator Deeds, it would move up the congressional primaries.
So Senator Van Valkenburg. Or Mr. Chair, if Senator Van Valkenburg is a candidate for Congress and still a member of the Senate, he would have to fulfill both responsibilities, campaigning and serving at the same time.
Senator Deeds, Mr. Chair, I would say that if a state legislator was feeling very frisky and wanted to run for a congressional office in the presidential year, it would impact their service, yes.
I have a question.
Which is a policy choice we have to decide to make.
Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. So would this impact anybody other than congressional primaries?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it would be the primaries in that even year on the presidential primaries. There may be a couple of local primaries that might be affected by that.
Mr. Chair.
Senator, are you? Senator Sturdivant?
Okay, I think I understand. So like in Richmond just had their mayoral election, so that would be an earlier primary.
Theory.
Okay, and then just follow up, Mr. Chair.
Although, actually, can I just clarify that though real quick? I would say though that a lot of those elections end up being non-primary and or non-partisan and don't end up having primaries, as for example, Richmond mayor's race.
True. One follow-up. So I think you would have a situation where you had a congressional candidate who would have to do the early primary in a presidential year, and then for their reelect 2 years later would do the normal
primary.
Okay, so then
Mr. Chair, Senator Servant, that is correct. And Mr. Chair, I would go back to the same thing that I said to Senator Deeds, which this is a policy choice, right? There's some give and take here, but I do think the idea of having those two primaries in that 1 year is confusing for voters. I think it leads to a harder time for a lot of those congressional candidates getting voters to the polls because people assume it's related to the presidential year. We're talking about two primaries stacked on top of each other in a presidential year in terms of organization, right, and workload and stuff like that. The drawbacks, right, to if you see them as drawbacks, some of them I might, some of them I might not, is certainly a state legislator running for a federal office would have a little bit of increased conflict, and you would have the congressional candidates on two separate cycles, although I think they can get over that pretty quickly.
Senator, I have a question for you.
Yeah, Senator.
Have you spoken to local electeds? I know there's always an issue when there's a presidential election that down ballot elections don't get the necessarily view or attention that they rightly deserve, as well as the price associated with local candidates trying to maybe have TV or literature or some type of communication.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
I hate to sound like a broken record here, but I think I'd say the same thing. You know, when we had that conversation 4 years ago, I think it was about local elections having to move to November because, of course, some were in November, some were not. And as a General Assembly, we decided to move them to November. There was a similar dialogue on that issue, right? And I know that a lot of our local friends feel that way regardless, right? So, for example, in Henrico, when I was running for this seat and we had state elections, we also had local elections, and of course they felt a little left out and they felt like it was a little bit harder and a little bit more financially costly. But I mean, I just think unfortunately some of that is the burden they bear, but that is also a policy decision that we would need to make, or a policy choice.
Senator Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the petitions to get on the ballot, I know that I think in the presidential year, you have to start on January 1st. Do they start any earlier? Because normally we have time for our congressional candidates to get petition signatures starting on January 1st, and they don't have to turn them in till March or April or something. And this would accelerate things. And I'm just wondering if they'd have the same amount of time to gather signatures, the 1,000 signatures, like for the U.S. House.
Yeah, I'm going to defer, Mr. Chair, Senator, I'm going to defer to council, but I believe that's taken care of on lines 22.
It references a code section,
23.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
So I'm going to defer to Brooks.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator Evans. So on lines 22 and 23, it says, however, petition signatures for candidates for any office elected in November of a presidential election year shall be signed on or after the date prescribed by the state board pursuant to 24.2-544. And that section has to do with presidential petition gathering. So whenever the presidential candidates can begin their petition gathering, so can everybody else. I think last year that began sometime July, in July. So I gave them a little extra time actually.
Yeah. Mr. Chair.
There we go. Senator Srinivasan is in the queue, and then
Brooks, does that apply to primaries or just general election candidates? The way I read this, it's the way I read language on 22 and 23. You're talking about office elected in November, but I guess the congressional offices are elected in November. But what about the presidential primaries? Under the rules right now, you can't start gathering signatures until the 1st of January.
Mr. Chair, Senator Deeds. No, so under 24.2-544, the state board sets the date at which petitions can begin to be gathered and the dates on which paperwork is due for presidential candidates. That's separate from what is normally done for anyone doing a June primary and then engaging in the November after that.
Srinivasan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patrons. This is only for congressional races, not for General Assembly races.
Mr. Chair, Senator Srinivasan, I would say this is for elections that are in presidential years. So it's only in that presidential election year. So no state elections and a lot of local elections are chalked off. There might be a couple of local elections that get caught up in a presidential cycle where they have a primary where that might take place. Once again, though, a lot of local elections are nonpartisan, and therefore you don't have that, and that's not universally true, right? But to the direct answer to your question is yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wow, do we have anyone here to speak in support of this legislation?
I didn't bring anybody.
Those online that wish to speak in support, please raise your hand.
Is there anyone online? All right. Is there anyone in opposition of this legislation?
Those online that wish to speak in opposition, please raise your hand.
All right. Any comments by the board?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
I would ask Senator Van Valkenburg, have you run this by anybody in the United States Senate or in Congress, any of our of Democrats or Republicans?
No.
You have not?
Yeah. No. Senator, I see what you're going with this. I have concern with this bill. Senator Salim is in the queue.
Mr. Chair, given the appropriate time, I just wanted to speak on the bill.
Now was the appropriate time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say for the patron, thank you for bringing this up. There has been where we had elections at the congressional level where we had two separate primaries, and a lot of voters realized that they just voted for the presidential primaries just to go maybe a month later to vote for another primary in June, and have always questioned why don't we do this in the same day or the same cycle. And, for that reason, I think this is not only a good bill, but it is also about voter turnout. In presidential years, or at least presidential election years where we do have a primary, we see a large number of voters who have never voted before, and we failed to get them to come out in off years. So I think this is an opportunity to say we're going to go to an increased voter turnout. I have two cities, one town, and one county that I represent, and we moved the local town and city elections to the November cycle, where we saw an increase in participation from voters significantly, where those communities had a say in who they elect. So I think this is a good bill, and I hope that we can support it.
Senator, I see what you're trying to do here, but I think there's just a lot of questions we have, and I think we need to ensure that we don't adversely affect local as well as our congressional candidates as well. I think it does have merit in everything Senator Salim has stated, but I feel very uncomfortable without at least knowing our partners, without some sense of support, or at least having taken a look at this at the local and especially congressional level. But with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, very gently, I would move that we pass the by definitely, and that the chair write a letter to the political party chairs, both Democratic and Republican of the state, along with the United States, both United States senators, and all 11 Congress people, and find out what their views of this would be. I mean, I think we ought to talk to some people about this. We ought to talk to some people that are going to be affected by it. It ain't going to be me, But if it's Senator Van Valkenburg or Senator Rouse or Senator Eben or Senator Sturdivant or Senator D-Staff, Senator Diggs, if anybody else wants to run for, well, I'm just concerned that this you could catch some people up.
What? This. Can I get the last word?
Hold on, just 1 second here. There's a motion. Is there a second?
What was the motion?
Motion was the PBI with a letter.
No. Okay.
Yeah, the letter. There's a motion. There's second. No, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I suppose I don't mind getting the input of the elected officials that are currently represented by us, but I also kind of don't really care that much about their opinion either, because at the end of the day, I think I care more about our democracy and having people show up and having one election that people can point to. And I think, honestly, they probably all benefit from that if we're being real, just because of incumbency and all the other things that go with that. But at the end of the day, I think if we want to talk about people understanding what's going on, yes, to everybody in the audience, I do sometimes want to look out for the registrars, right, to decrease their workload when you do have those two primaries, and then, you add other things in there. I'm okay with the motion, I suppose, but I hope that when we come back next year, we don't take as gospel the things that they write back to us. No, and for the record, I don't think that Senator Deeds is suggesting that.
I think, Senator, this bill certainly has merit in trying to ensure that turnout people vote, but also this past election as well. Presidential elections carry a lot of weight, and people tend just to look at the top of the ticket. I know we had to remind folks to turn the ballot over, that they were down ballot offices as well. And I just want to make sure we aren't overlooking anything. There's a motion, and it's been properly seconded. Please open the vote.
You can vote down there, Tyler.
The motion is to pass by indefinitely.
I voted. Oh, he did vote. Okay.
The motion is to pass by indefinitely.
So that fails.
It failed.
It failed.
There's 9.
Is there a second motion?
I have a motion to report.
Second.
The motion is to report. Please open the vote.
Does it have to go to finance? Does not.
It saves us money, but
It does not have to go to finance.
not in this budget, not for 3 years.
Ayes 8, noes 6, 1 abstention.
8-6, the bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
All right, items. We'll take up my bills now. Yes.
Okay, Senator Rouse, you have 2 bills.
I have 2 bills. One bill we passed last year out of committee you've seen before. This bill is SB 814.
SB 814, turn your attention to Senator Rouse.
This bill allows for local governing bodies to convert at-large seats to single-member districts if it has been subject to a court order imposing a remedial election system under voting rights laws. In 2021, the city of Virginia Beach was mandated by the U.S. District Court to use a 10-district system for members of the city council with only a mayor elected citywide. The city conducted public outreach and found that 81% of the public supported this change, and it adopted the system in 2023. The U.S. District Court made it clear that the city, it will prohibit the use of any election system other than the 10-1 system with single-member voting districts. This simple legislation will allow localities that are subject to federal court orders to convert at-large seats to single-member districts and comply with the federal voting laws, and that is the bill.
Okay, we passed this out last year. Did the House pass it?
Yes, it passed.
The
and
bill got vetoed by the governor.
That's right.
Has it changed at all from the bill that was introduced
It
last
does
year?
not.
Second.
Well, do you have people here in
We do.
support of the bill?
There's no one here we have one person here.
One person in support of the bill?
Those online that wish to support the bill, please raise your hand.
We have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Joan Portley to Women Voters of Virginia. We just want to say that we support this bill, and it will provide much-needed clarity, and we thank you.
Okay, are there other people in the room? If not, 30 seconds for the person online.
Georgia Allen, you may unmute your microphone and turn on your camera. Georgia Allen, you may begin.
Need to turn your camera on.
I'm just trying to figure out this camera thing. Okay. Alrighty.
We need your camera on, ma'am.
Okay, I see myself in mine, but
We don't see you. And our rules require that we can see you.
okay, let's see how I can make this thing work.
She's for it.
Does this?
Okay, ma'am, we will note you're for it. Okay, are those that are opposed to the bill in the room?
Those online that wish to oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
Senator Sturdivant, I think you have a question.
Just a question, Mr. Chair. Is this something that has come at the request of Virginia Beach City Council?
It has come last year, but I will, for the record, has been a split city council, we'll say.
Okay, got one person online that wants to speak against this.
Gayleen Knoyton, you may begin.
I think she's for it, though. Gayleen?
Yeah, she's for it.
Gayleen, if you're going to speak, we need your camera on.
For the bill. The Virginia NAACP is strongly behind this bill.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's nobody else on the bill's before the committee. Does anybody on the committee have anything to say, or the bill's before the committee?
Move to report.
Second.
Okay, unless there's another motion, please open the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Ayes 807. Mr. Chair, do you have another bill?
Yes, I have one more bill. 813. 813 mandates that the Department of Elections complete any voting purging programs at least 90 days before an election. I think we have a substitute as well. We'll need to move.
Do I have a motion on the substitute? Okay. Got a motion and a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is this online or is this something? It's online. Okay.
This will ensure that eligible voters, Democrat, Republican, Independent, have sufficient opportunity to respond to rectify their voter registration before Election Day. My committee substitute also increases the time allowed for voters to rectify their voter registration records from 14 days to 28 days after notice of their record purge is mailed to them. The key word there is mailed to them, and I think we all understand the mail has been quite slow these days.
It has to be after it's delivered to them or after it's mailed?
After it's mailed to them. It was a sad day for democracy when it resulted in a mass removal of Virginians from the state's voting rolls before the 2024 general election. This bill counters the politicization of voting roll purges that wrongly removed so many eligible voting Virginia citizens from the voting rolls in the final stretch of the election when there was insufficient time to rectify their voter registration records before Election Day. And let me be clear, this legislation does not end voter list maintenance. It will simply ensure that any program designed to systematically remove ineligible voters from the voting registration system must occur no later than 90 days before a primary or general election. This bill does not prevent removing names at the registrant's request or removing names as allowed by existing law due to criminal conviction, mental incapacity, or death. It also does not prevent corrections to registration records under current law. And that is the bill before you.
Okay, Senator Sturdivant has got something.
Just a question for the patron, Mr. Chair, and it's too late in the evening to get into a debate on this particular issue, but just to clarify so I understand, is this essentially codifying the cooling off period that DOJ filed a lawsuit against us over a couple of months ago regarding the removal of the non-citizens from the voter rolls
within the 90-day period? Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so 3 minutes for people in the room who want to speak in favor of the bill.
Those online who wish to support the bill, please raise your hand.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sheila Hurley-Hennessy. I'm with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and I swung by all of your offices today to ask you to support this bill. This bill allows people who are eligible voters and citizens to remain on the voting roll. It prevents confusion when folks get a notification you could be removed from the voting roll, that they have more time to respond, more time to prove their citizenship, and it makes sure that if someone is removed a week or two ahead of the election, that doesn't confuse them as they go to the polls to vote. This impacts people in my organization. It impacts people around Virginia, as you all saw the news stories last October, and it particularly impacts folks who are new citizens. We are a member of the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights, and I will let them speak next. Thank you so much, and please support the bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Monica Sarmiento, and I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights. And for so many reasons that my colleague Sheila listed, we are in full support of this bill. As last year, we saw so many naturalized citizens removed from the voter rolls. And as voting right is absolutely sacred, we urge all members to go ahead and vote yes for this bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Joan Port, Leader Women Voters of Virginia. I agree with everything that my friend Monica said. We also had many of our members purged from the rolls who were naturalized citizens, and we appreciate you passing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there people online? Nobody online. Are there those that have another view?
Those online that wish to oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
3. Okay, 30 seconds each. 4, 30 seconds each.
Melody Clark, you may begin.
Thank you so much. I know you guys are very much ready to wrap up. Melody Clark with Virginia Institute Action. Virginia, our claim to fame is having frequent elections. When other states have none, we've got you covered. And we have so many of them and so frequently. And because rolls cannot be cleaned up within 90 days before an election, this makes it very, very difficult for our registrars. So we are against this bill because of the frequent elections. This bill proposes changes that would impede voter list accuracy.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next.
Clara, you may begin.
Thank you, ma'am. Clara Wheeler, Albemarle County Electoral Board, speaking for myself. The federal law and the current Virginia law prohibit massive or bulk removal of names in less than 90 days, but it should not, and nor does it, does not prohibit the registrars from removing individual names who are illegally registered to begin with. Federal law says that if someone is illegally registered, you can take them off at any time. Thank you.
Move to report.
Anne Gregorian, you may begin. You may begin, Anne Gregorian.
Ms. Gregorian, we need your camera on.
Galen Knoyton, you may begin.
I can't imagine that Galen's against this bill.
No, I'm not. I'm not against.
We got it. We got you. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Move to report.
Is there a second? Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to report the bill. Unless there's another motion, please open the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Ayes 8, noes 7. It's your committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Deeb. Thank you, Senator Deeb. Bill reports 8-7. Senator Suderline.
Yes, sir.
I
have two bills. Do you have a preference which one goes first?
1174.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee. 1174 deals with the perimeter we have outside of voting locations, which we're all familiar with. We as candidates that want to meet voters, we have to stay beyond this perimeter. So do any of our supporters or supporters of other candidates. We stay behind this line. This year there was a strongly supported constitutional amendment that didn't really get a lot of strong emotions, but it still became an issue because a local civic group was handing the materials out, and they maintained that because it was referendum material, and it was simply informative, they should not be hit with the 40 feet rule. And that was the interpretation for a little bit. I don't think that was the correct interpretation, but I think there's a good chance we're going to have some referenda coming before the Commonwealth that will have very strong emotions. And I think that we should clarify that the perimeter rule applies to referenda questions and the materials that people might hand out for that. I sort of think of this as the aspirin bill that we're taking before we have that headache.
Do you have anyone here to speak in support of the bill?
Those online that wish to support the bill, please raise your hand.
I did not coordinate anyone, sir.
Okay. You have one person here who wants to speak in support. So you have a minute, ma'am.
Oh, I won't take a minute. It's too late. We just want to say League of Women Voters Virginia supports this bill. Thank you.
Okay. No one in opposition?
Those online in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand.
Okay. Does anyone on the committee any comments? Okay. All right. Move to report in second. Please open the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second.
Okay. Sorry. And Mr. Chair, Senator, sorry, there was a drafting error on line 130. We put ballot measure instead of referendum. So if you don't mind, a technical amendment
So
to
we have a technical amendment.
strike ballot measure and insert referendum.
So strike ballot and put referendum. What line was it?
On line 130.
Line 130. So we have a technical amendment before us. Is there a motion? Second, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Hearing none, that amendment is before us, and now the bill is in proper order. And it's reported in a minute. And please open the vote.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, 1175, sorry, that bill reports 15-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee. Senate Bill 1175 seeks to provide uniform voting access across the Commonwealth. On Election Day, we know that every voter has the ability to vote at their polling location between 6 in the morning and 7 at night, and it's uniform everywhere. With the advent of wide-scale early voting, it varies across the Commonwealth. Some jurisdictions get to vote on Sundays, some don't. Some you can go vote during lunch hour. Others, they're open every day, but they take a substantial lunch hour, and if that's the time you can vote easily, good luck. So what 1175 seeks to do is make that uniform by requiring that all the in-person absentee voting locations, when they're in operation Monday through Friday, be open from 8 to 5 p.m. And it also clarifies that, which this is status quo, the last 2 Saturdays of the election cycle, there's early voting. And also it clarifies the Sunday immediately before the election, there's voting option. And that's the bill.
Senator Evan.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For Senator Suderline, I spoke to one of my registrars today about this bill, and they're not open at 8 a.m. on Saturdays currently when they do Saturday voting. And also, is this intended to be that everyone's open the exact same hours? Because this would actually shorten the hours. They open past 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. the week before the election.
Mr. Chairman.
Currently.
Mr. Chairman, what the number one objective of the bill is to have universal access. And the second goal of it, in addition, which has the same function, is anyone that asks, when can I go vote? It's the same answer. So right now in the Roanoke Valley, you hear me talk about Salem, Roanoke City, and the county a lot. I mean, you could be in any one of those jurisdictions very quickly. You work in one, live in another, that's where you vote. But you have 3 completely different time frames of when you're able to vote. And I just think that it should be the same way, just like there's folks that make sure they don't keep anyone at the office after 6 on Election Day to make sure that everyone can make it back by 7. I understand some jurisdictions with longer commute, they might need to do that earlier. But I just think that it needs to be uniform so that we all know what the polling times are.
Thank you, Senator Suderline. We just had another uniform bill where a patron wanted to move all the localities, prohibited area back 100 feet. And we understand that the localities have different geographical needs as well. With that being said, there are different hours may work for rural communities opposed to cities, towns, and other councils. So with that, do you have anyone here in support of the bill?
I didn't coordinate
anyone here in opposition of the bill?
Those online that wish to support the bill, please raise your hand. Those online that wish to oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
All right. Any comments by members of the committee? Is there Senator Evans?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the spirit of the bill. I like the idea of the same Saturdays, same Sundays, but I think there needs to be a larger conversation, particularly among the registrars, about what those hours would be. And I don't want to shorten the hours that we've got in some of my localities. So for that reason, I can't support the bill as it is, but I like the spirit of it. But I think I would encourage if the bill does not pass, to perhaps bring this to the Registrars Association and see if they can come together and with one voice about what those hours should be.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I would move respectfully to PBI.
Your second. Chair seconds. All right. Any further comment? Please open the vote.
Ayes 8, no 7.
It's 8-7. The bill is passed by. Thank you, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. All right, last bill of tonight, I should say. Senator Favola, you have SB 760 in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had a long day with the Health Subcommittee. This is very straightforward. What it does is it just changes the date by which your absentee ballot must be received. The current law has it by noon on the Friday after the election, and this would change it to 5 p.m. That's it. It's on line 108, and that's my entire bill.
So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone here to speak in support of the bill?
Those online that wish to support the bill, please raise your hand.
2 minutes.
This is a very important bill. Leader of Women Voters of Virginia strongly supports it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Krista Rosa, Arlington County. I support this bill. I know in Arlington, there was a recent election where on Friday, more than 200 ballots were received after the 12 noon deadline. They had been postmarked properly by Election Day, but because of the Postal Service, it was not delivered on time. So to make sure that we don't disenfranchise people who did everything they should have, let's pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here speaking in opposition of the bill?
Those online that oppose the bill, please raise your hand.
All right, no. Any members of the committee have any comments, questions? Not. Okay. I have Srinivasan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the patron. I realized the struggle with this in my recent special election. I was like, 12 p.m. with the snow and everything. Why can't it be on Friday? Well, the current law says 12 p.m., not 5 p.m. So thank you for bringing this important amendment. Thank you so much.
It's just a baby step forward.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion?
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second. Please open the voting roll. All right, before we leave.
Vote me yes.
Before we leave, we have, well, you weren't part of the prevailing side though, so you.
I was part of the prevailing side.
Oh, you voted yes?
I voted against it.
Yeah, so you wasn't part of the prevailing side.
No, and I voted in support of killing his bill.
Oh, okay. So, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, having voting on the side in which we just passed, Suderline Senate Bill 1175, I'd like to redo that vote.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on 1 second. Is it
when appropriate?
Is it frozen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had all the votes.
Please, this is for SB 760. The motion was to report.
Yeah.
Motion is to report. Yeah, there's time. Hold on, we're gonna do it one more time. I know it's late. Well, third time the charm. Let's get it. This is a motion to report. SB 760.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Okay, now we have one more piece of business on 1175.
Mr. Chair, voting on the side on which we killed,
rejected.
Senate Bill 1175, I wish we would reconsider that vote.
It's the motion to reconsider the vote. Is there a second? All right, please open the vote. To reconsider.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Yep. And now we have the motion. There was a motion to pass by indefinitely. It was properly, make the motion. Someone make the motion. It's been properly motioned and seconded. Please open the vote. To pass by indefinitely.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Ayes 8, 7. That bill is passed by indefinitely. That completes the docket.
Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.